Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto and Weiss Romance harem rwby. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by Statchar and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. Our fate. After all that blood. It felt like a dream. The little star in the sky caught his eye. It was bright and shining, but it was snuffed out by a passing shade. Why did it have to hide? Perhaps, the darkness had not wanted him to gaze at it, or maybe it was fleeing. It didn't matter, there was so many that it would be impossible to cover them all. The starry sky was the only recompense of light. Yet as if it could hear his thoughts, the sentient shadow grew and began to blot them out. Something was wrong. He drew in a breath and a dull ache coursed through his body. His head felt like it was being pounded, but it went on the back burner when he recalled the situation. No matter how much he tried to force his body to budge, he couldn't move. He was forced to gaze at the growing shadow in the sky. Then the last moments fully recollected and he couldn't believe it. Uncertainty crept in, too much emotion to describe how to feel. Instead, he closed his eyes and felt the weight lift off his shoulders. He wasn't sure if he wept, laughed, cursed, or all at once. You're going to die. Not exactly to plan, he sighed. No plan had, he thought bitterly. At the very least, he endured until the very end. In what felt a crime, he forced his eyes open. If only to confirm that his eyes were true. It was a moon, it appeared to be falling, but it only grew and rose with each breath. Shadowy chunks of rock rained toward it, crashing onto its surface. Light flourished against it, casting a dancing luminescence across the land. Soon, the earth under him began to give in to the call. Along with the wild beat of his heart, all he heard was howling gales and cracks of rock. How petty of Kaguya, like this was her final curse. He would never part with the battlefield. Her last graveyard. Why couldn't she just die like a normal person? Then again, princesses were known for their melodrama. The sky fractured and the earth lifted. The prison in the sky grew. Its crashes made a terrible, deafening wave that made his heart tremble. Suddenly, he laughed, but his lungs hurt when he did, so it was short-lived. Holy fuck, he won, he'd been able to do it. He couldn't believe it, even when it was going down in front of him. At the very least, at the graciousness of the goddess, he was granted one last goodbye to a friend. One who had witnessed it all since the moment of his birth. The blurred visage of a giant fox appeared. Kurama had its snout inches away, concern spread across its canine features. A giant red eye stared into him. Naruto tasted metal in his mouth as he tried to speak. Though he couldn't find words. I guess, I'll be seeing you. It was a nice ride, Kurama replied. What a powerful, sentimental conversation. Though, he wouldn't see him, not again. Kurama could never go with him. This was the end of the road, journey's end, and all those other complicated, stupid jargons. Still, there was a few final actions he can take. First, point a finger at the moon, not just any finger, the most important part, a middle one. Then rest as much as possible. The stars had disappeared and darkness edged closer. There was nothing more than a blurry visage in the sky. It was useless to look. He couldn't hold the finger up any longer and he watched his hand flicker and waver like a dying candle. The last he could do was hold a sword close to his chest. A last memento of a brother. Fate. How it twisted his tongue, how a simple word made him numb and desolate. What kind of person came up with such an utterly, stupidly worthless word? What a dream to depend on. That it was fate that made him strong and weak. Fate that drew, erased, and scribbled the path of life. Fate that made his friends die. He didn't want to end it off like this, bitter and hate-filled. He made life as good as possible under the circumstances. It could have been better, but it was good. The wind blew at her hair, her heart a pleasant beat. The familiar rush of excitement. Her lips curled in a smile, really, it was a beautiful day for a ride in the skies. It was unfortunate that others didn't share the same sentiment. The look behind her to judge the distance from herself, another, panicked soul. The direction of the breeze shifted lower. The green below grew larger and soon, she met the ground, she tucked, rolled, and flipped onto her feet. She landed with a wide spread of her arms and bowed for an invisible audience. There was still a chorus of excited cries, but it wasn't for her. Above, students clamored as they shot through the skies, gunfire and other means to propel forward. They soon disappeared behind the thicket of the trees. The artifact was deeper in the forest, but first she had retrieve her weapon and gain a partner that was pinned by it. This was a competition, but she had no worry about losing. Her wrist started a pace, it wouldn't be any good if John were stuck up there any longer than necessary. A bright glow caught her eye, but it died as quickly as it came. A curious glance, and without her realizing, she had been drawn to it, like a moth to flame. She halted her possessed steps. Strange, she noticed no other platforms had landed nearby. Now, curiosity had taken hold. She looked for a peek at the cause of this mysterious light. It was a meadow, and in a stream, half submerged within the passing shallow water was a blond boy. His arm outstretched in his attempt to crawl away. "Hello?" She called out but received no response. He breathed raggedly, rasping for air. Hurry gave a mental apology to John, but someone needed her help. She hastened to his location. She discarded her shield before she pulled him out of the water, his legs dragged behind him. "Hey. Are you alright?" The only response was a groan. She stopped. "Can you stand? You have to give me something." She looked around for any side of the platform, but there was no sign of it, which was odd. He held a sword to his hand and it buried against the ground. Signaling his desire to sit or stand, and she tried to help. His arms shook with feverish intensity and his gasps hadn't lessened in the slightest. Hera saw his face for the first time, 3 marks on each cheek and blank glazed eyes. His blue's eyes didn't focus, like he saw nothing. He muttered something inaudible. "Sorry, I didn't catch that," she said. He leaned on his sword for support and she let him go. "What happened to you?" This was the strangest thing. She looked him over for any wounds, but there was nothing noticeable. Most of his limbs lay limp, the exception being his right arm. How did he come to be so injured? The snap of a twig. Hera recalled her shield and caught it in her hand to face the threat. It was a beowulf. Ebony fur stuck straight, body poised for a pounce. A white skull featured on its head and along the length of its spine ran a row of spiked bone. It paid no attention to her, not until she stood in front. She had only her shield, but it would do. One beowulf wasn't a threat. At least, that's what she thought until more surfaced from the brushes of the forest. This wasn't good. At all. "If you can hear me, and if you can stand." One of them charged and jumped, but she swung her shield and met its fangs with the edge of her shield, a loud crack as its jaw disfigured. It dropped. Another had joined, she stepped aside and kicked it in the chest, it was sent flying into the bushes. That would be great. It was blinding at first. The perpetual burning throb in his eyes. Like he hadn't seen light in years. He saw colors, but nothing solid and clear. He blinked, feeling his lashes brush against his skin. He was blind. Thoughts crossed his mind that this was truly the end. However, the moments grew longer with the searing pain. Every breath wasn't enough and he inhaled flames that cooked his lungs. It grounded him, he was alive and gasping for air. He saw shapes with dull colors, but they were dark silhouettes as their colors melded together. Red and gold moved toward him. The incomprehensible, muffled mutters he heard comforted him from the confusion. Not yet, it couldn't be counted as a whisper. The red figure had disappeared. Now, all he saw were shifting shadows that scattered around in his vision. He saw lifeless colors close to him. Darkness was deeper and shadows started to dance near it. There was a constant ringing in his eyes and he heard a howl. What was that? He was dead, wasn't he? It made sense, didn't it? A breath, a scorching inferno sparked to life in his lungs. He couldn't think, it hurt, all of it hurt so much. There was something was gnawing in his head, drilling and boring deeper inside. What was wrong with him? He heard a scream. Red danced in his vision, flowing wildly in this consumed abyss of its twisting shadows. One of them leapt toward him, but was cast aside. Through the ringing, he heard a muffled sound of a voice. The same from earlier. He had to move, but no matter how much he willed to stand, it was impossible. Naruto tightly held the grip of the blade. It was the only limb that bent to his will. He had to get up. He saw the woman then, it was she stood behind a waterfall. He had to stand. A creature ran past her, and her hand reached out to him. Another cry. All he saw was red. He had done the impossible by defeating a goddess, yet he couldn't something as simple as this. This was not acceptable. He gripped the sword and ran his hand along the edge. His palm grew hot and wet, slick with blood. You fucking idiot, he thought. He couldn't stop shaking and felt an unbearable pressure in his skull. Get up. The breath that refreshed his entire being. The darkness dispersed and left only light. The shadows became wolves. The reddened voice, a woman. The wolf threw itself at him. He blocked its bite with the blade. He kneed the wolf-like beast in its underbelly. Naruto slashed and severed a part of his head and it dropped dead. There was only time for action as another lunged at him, but he stepped aside and sliced the creature in a clean stroke. The woman launched her shield at the wolf and it was returned when she scored a hit. He came to her side to dispatch another couple of these odd-looking wolves. He was granted a brief reprieve. He was surrounded by a lush green forest. Naruto spared the young woman an apologetic glance and that was returned with a relieved sigh and a smile. They prepared themselves and Naruto noticed he was armed with the only efficient weapon. Howls rang in the air that signaled their appearance. The scratches of branches being swept aside, twigs and wood snapping. Within the forest, he saw a horde of them approach. His body felt heavy and slow to respond to his commands. Muscles stiff and burning as he held himself. It felt as if he hadn't moved in ages or still suffered from his wounds. He was no longer hindered by the pain in his chest, but his lungs still longed for air. Good God, even his bones ached. In short, he wouldn't be able to fight well enough to repel them all. Screw this, he muttered. Naruto tapped her arm and then turned away from oncoming assault. She followed, and he started to sprint as fast as his legs could carry him. Chakra was out of the question. Even thinking about it sent phantom pains through his body. His thoughts were interrupted when several creatures appeared in front. The bronze-armored girl threw her shield at one of the wolves. It crashed against its legs, falling face first into the ground. The shield immediately returned to her hand. The others charged, pouncing at them with large fang primed. He pointed toward the one in front as he dealt with the other, a kick, and it was sent away. The girl charged in front him, shield raised as she crashed against one of the wolves. He threw Sasuke's sword at another the wolf, piercing its skull. The armored girl grabbed a hold of the blade as he righted her footing and kept her momentum. She tossed Sasuke's blade back to him. More of these feral wolves kept racing after them, almost a never-ending stream. He led the girl toward areas where they would have an advantage as they fought them off. They would meet their end if they stopped from the gaining horde. Several of them had caught up, but in a trench as to help them from being overrun. Just as he thought they were being overwhelmed, two figures appeared from the thick of the forest, with thunder-like explosions from items they held in their hands. An odd glyph appeared in front as them. A wolf crashed into the seemingly solid symbol. Ice formed on the ground, creating a slippery terrain to make it more difficult for these beasts to traverse. He noticed the white-haired girl doing these techniques. Her teammate, a black-haired girl, appeared in front of them and helped fend them off. Now, they could destroy the rest of this mindless creatures. They said words he didn't recognize, but it didn't matter. The wolves began to drop and the horde dwindled. They continued to step back, several of the creatures appeared from the above before they were brought down. Naruto stayed in front, dealing with any that came too close. He directed the nearest person if any of these monsters appeared at their flanks. There was just so many, instead of bodies creating a hurdle for the wolves to climb over, they dissipated into black dust. He tapped the shoulder of the girl who could use ice, and he made a motion with his hand to cover them. Hopefully she understood. She nodded. The top of the trench was quickly covered by a thick layer of ice, creating a tunnel. More ice covered the bottom of the ground, making it harder for the beasts to quickly reach them. These things were so mindless and feral. Did he have some sort of treat on him? He witnessed other things too, like how the weapons that blown bullets also changed into the swords they currently held. Or the shadow-like clones that appeared from the black-haired girl, or the glyphs that would appear. He was gasping for air by the time the last one dissolved into ash. It was a long series of days. Fighting Kurama and way too many things after that, which eventually concluded with fighting Kagaya. That was only a briefest of summaries. Naruto turned to the others and heard words he couldn't understand. Judging by their body language, they seemed too in disbelief and in relief. They knew each other and conversed before they turned their attention on him. Words were said that was alien to him. It was absolute gibberish. Naruto felt bile rise in his throat and he turned toward a bush. What came out was less bile but more slime and dry heaves. The one clad in bronze armor stepped to him, the one that saved him. She was sweating and despite almost causing her death, she smiled. He could catch a name, or at least what sounded like one. She tried to hide her disgust, but her concern wasn't lost. The name that made his tongue twist strangely. She spoke a few words before his head felt like it smashed against the moon. He soothed his temples to calm the terrible paging. He was only able to catch the last word she said. Partners now, I suppose, she smiled, holding a hand for him. He grasped it with his own shaking hand. I had another in mind, but you needed help. He nodded, feeling like if he spoke now, he would never speak again. You were fortunate we were nearby, and that, the white-haired started, looking at the black-haired girl with a frown. Blake had noticed the strange behavior of the Beowulfs. They stopped attacking me, did you notice that? Blake said, and he caught her gaze. An eye-catching feature about her was the bow she held in her hair, as well the dominant black clothes. The girl dressed in white, a faded scar on her left eye. Yes, anyways. I'm Weiss Schnee, I don't think we've met at orientation. Like she said, I'm Blake. All the others looked at him then, and no doubt he would have to speak. He cleared his throat and caught his breath. Naruto Uzumaki, he replied. No longer feeling everything would fall apart, but it still loomed precariously. They continued to study him, but he didn't know why. He was not in the elemental nations, that was for certain. He didn't quite remember ever traversing dimensions. Though, there was that brief darkness, and he didn't have the headache. How fortunate for you to end with Y said. He glanced at his partner, looking sheepish. At any rate, we should continue our search. They voiced their agreements and started to walk. Since he didn't know what else to do, he might as well follow. They had the sense of direction. I've never seen such a large pack of beetles before, Purah murmured. Or ones that acted so oddly. We killed at least 20 of them, Weiss said. Naruto and Blake were content with not saying anything, both for different reasons. Naruto and I killed quite a few before we ran into you both, Purah replied. I hope it doesn't happen again, or with other Grim. Grim, beetles. He had never heard these words. Grim seemed such an intimidating word. I feel uncomfortable without my weapon, I used it to pin John to a tree before I ran into Naruto, Purah said. I'm sure he's fine, Weiss replied. Perhaps we can go and fetch it. And help him too, I guess. I hope so, but it was all a blur and I don't recall the place, an expression filled with worry as she talked. Hey, he muttered. He drifted closer to get her attention. She was tall and he had to look up at her. Sorry for what happened back there. It's fine, she smiled, I think the better question is, are you doing okay? He had to think about it, well I don't feel like I'm dying. A pause, that's good. She changed the subject. What happened? He had to think about it, I have no idea. Naruto dug his hands into his pocket to quell the uncontrollable shakes. Get her somewhere safe, then he could rest. Talking as much as he loved to do it was exhausting. Purah seemed to understand that he didn't feel like talking. She went ahead. Hey, Weiss walked up to him. She came close, her voice low so the others couldn't hear. If you can switch partners, would you consider it? He shrugged, whatever. Her blue eyes widened, surprised, relieved, like she had no hope for it. Well, that's great, she said, smiling. Blake doesn't seem to hold a high opinion of me. It would be best, after all, Purah and I would be able to learn more from one another. It seemed she liked the girl he had been partnered with in this strange place. Confident in herself too. Her energy disappeared after she got what she wanted. The smallest of talks followed, how did you get so roughed up? He inspected his clothes, which was somehow holding together. At least he wasn't naked. I look like it, I feel like it, it's been rough. I suppose that can happen, Weiss replied. The end of the small talk. He stared straight ahead. His heartbeat barely calmed, but he didn't feel that buzz in his blood to urge him on. A minute was ages. The longer he walked, it was like his limbs was turning to stone. Sometimes they spread apart, looking for their objective in the maze of wood. In open fields, they came together. Purah walked up to him again, undeterred from their previous encounter, you're very good with that sword. A memento, he held it in his right hand. While he didn't train extensively in sword techniques, he knew how to handle one, thanks, it belonged to a friend of mine. She gave a nod and thankfully didn't delve any further. It's really light, I was kind of surprised about that. Naruto couldn't agree, his arm was screaming at him to let it fall. Distant explosion saved him from answering, alongside it, roars and incoherent yelling. Should we help perhaps? Purah noted. As much I want them to be okay, I also want to pass, Weiss stated. I'm sure they're fine, only the talented are accepted into Beacon. I suppose you're right. Plus, I don't think any good awaits those that fail to grab one. Unless of course, my partner decides otherwise, then I would have no choice, Weiss finished. No, I want to pass too, Blake replied. It's like you said. The competition of sorts. Wherever he was, they weren't making a fuss of giant tree roots or of the moon. His gaze swept the horizon, but he didn't see a moon. His exhaustion tampered with thinking, so he resolved on doing it later. What was left of his energy had diverted to trying to keep up with their pace. An unbearable amount of time passed before they finally reached this temple they were talking about. No one was around, other than some roughed up patches on the ground, which revealed someone was previously here. It's just a pile of rocks, Naruto said. The temple was more of broken ruins of a rotunda, with pieces being laid all around on the flooring. There were some pieces set on podiums. Several had already been taken. Take our piece and then return, someone said. He was hoping this was a race, a one-way sprint like Chunin in exams. A fight would be an easy forfeit. Like his friend had said, what a cruel fate. Yes, with the first person you made eye contact with, Purah replied. Naruto found the redhead staring at him. The other one seemed to frown at them. How about you choose the one for us? Arguing was pointless and would only waste more of his energy. Whoever was running this would know that he wasn't a part of this. So, with getting her back a bigger priority, he would do this and let future him decide what to do. Besides, he wanted to get to know sleep like no one had ever known before. Weiss stepped forward and picked out a white piece and he quickly found the other one. I think I rather had enough of fighting for today. His luck came through when their way back was met with no other problems. He found himself at a ceremony, a tall lady was glaring daggers at him as soon as he appeared. Beside her, a man with a cane looked at him with a knowing grin. He looked to be in charge. It was revealed that the matching what was called chess pieces would form together for a larger team. A four-man cell. He caught the gaze of Blake while Weiss looked happily at his direction. Not at him, but rather to Purah. It was easy to see that she was rather fond of her if the previous attempts at chatter were of any indication. Pura had been able to get her weapon back by another blonde guy, he didn't remember his name. He heard the many teams being called. He couldn't remember where he came from, where was the exit. This was proving to be the hardest challenge to try and plan his navigation. Team NPBW, Naples. Who had taken the White Bishops, comprised of Pura Nikos, Blake Belladonna, and Weiss Schnee. Led by Naruto Uzumaki. His first thought went along the lines of how these people were crazy. 3 pictures appeared on a screen, below was unreadable scribbles he assumed was their names. There was a blank spot that was likely for him. There was an applause, and Pura clapped him on the back to send him forward to the stage where he would have to shake hands with this leader. He wondered how they even found out his name, but more importantly, why the fuck was he still being accepted into God knows what. He had seen the uniforms. This was some sort of academy. Or some sort of cult. Naruto reached the stage, where he gave the man a handshake. You know what? If this cult had a bed, then sure, he would join. No questions asked. Now, we have a bit to talk about, young man, the man said. In the noise, it could be mistaken as a form of congratulations. Naruto could only nod and realized his day was not over yet. Maybe he could sweet-talk his way out of it. He stood aside with the other captains. Everyone clapped and cheered for them. The ending speech given and students began to shuffle out, including the captains. He waited for the boss to talk to him. Sleep. Never could he have imagined at how enchanting and mystical something so simple could be. It was ludicrous. What he yearned for most for now was in his fingertips, literally at a drop of a hat. He could fall over onto the cold, hard floor and it would be done. However, a soft bed and a blanket was too tempting to pass up. Crowds lined up at tables and grabbed items before they left the room. Ozpin talked to a few students that approached him. He found the only people he recognized as others were barely memorable. His team began to line up at the tables without him. Pura found his gaze. He could have left the instant the girl was safe, but he didn't, and now he was here he had been given a team to lead. The big boss of this operation placed a hand on his shoulder. I hope you don't mind if we talk for a little while. The white-haired man bent down to his level, which was an effort on his part. I do, actually, Naruto muttered. Oh, care to explain? Super tired. I just want to sleep. I'll do this if you give me a bed. The sparkle in his eyes with an easy smile, you should be careful on making bargains. It's okay, besides, he had dozed off at several points during the ceremony. His new and unexpected partner had been awakening him. A little introduction, if you're uncertain on where you are, this is Beacon, an academy to train huntsmen and huntresses. So, it was a school and not a cult. That was a whole lot off his mind. Huntsman was self-explanatory, they hunt stuff. Oh, was his reply. If you said, bed you will have bought me. We have a bed. I'm all aboard. Sleep. The woman beside him shot a penetrating gaze before speaking. Are you sure that's wise, Mr. Ozpin? Of course, a pause and another look at him. You look like you might drop any moment, do you need any medical assistance? No, just a bed. A nod, there was a bag in his hand that he hadn't noticed. Ozpin gave it to him. It was another thing to carry, a change of clothes, I'm sure it will fit you. Naruto nodded, thanks, it was like he was in water, everything weighed him down. It also leaked into his mind and made him sluggish. Let us go see your team. We wouldn't want to keep them any longer. Naruto looked for the exit, students entered around several points in the room. There he saw his team looking at his direction. Their names were already forgotten, nor could he try. A short walk, and they reached them. Team NPBW, my apologies for keeping you from your leader. No doubt you're excited to start the year. Not at all, it's fine. And yes, of course Mr. Ozpin. I got this for you, Pura said. There were 2 bags in her hand and she held one out for him to grab. Oh look, yet another thing. He took it from her, thanks, I guess. Ozpin spoke again, tomorrow, before classes, would one of you please lead Mr. Uzumaki to my office? Of course. Sleep. I wish you all a pleasant evening. Naruto hadn't paid attention to who had talked. He followed his team. The girl with the scar looked at him, it seems we have to share a room with a boy for the next 4 years. How lovely, she said sarcastically. Naruto couldn't remember her name, but it was a complicated one. What came to mind was rice. The rest of the time was trying to recall their names, like pie. He felt hungry, but he lost his appetite quickly. Someone asked him a question about belongings, but he had none. He stood around a little, but he saw no beds, so it wasn't where he was to sleep. Next thing he knew he was inside of a room. He didn't quite remember when the others had grabbed more bags, slung over their shoulders or being wheeled behind them. There were 4 beds and 2 dressers. I call for this, one claimed by tossing some bags on the mattress. The other was silent as she claimed one for herself. I suppose this is mine, unless you have a preference. Purah asked. It's just a bed, he placed the sword in bags. Sheets, blankets, pillows were stacked on one another. Crap. He had to make his bed. So, he made it. Then, he looked at his white blanket and the pillow. Inviting, and it spoke to him, making him shiver. It would signal the end of the day. He was here, and what was he to do? Take a shower, of course. He went into the washroom and looked at himself in the mirror. Rice wasn't lying when she said he looked terrible. Eyes red, dark bags underneath. His face had splotches of dirt and his clothing singed and torn. It was like he had been wrung through the grave and barely tore his way out. He climbed into the shower, leaned against the wall, and found one of the knobs to turn. The water fell, and it weighed him down that he could barely stand. Ah, he found the problem. His clothes were still on. He shrugged them off and watched the floor of the shower. Dark colors of blood and dirt stained the draining water. He started to clean himself, wiping off the dirt and sweat. Yet, no matter how hard he scrubbed his hands, it didn't feel clean. The dust clung to him, his skin a paler color than what he used to. He scuffed it red and almost raw when he realized that it wasn't dirty. I'm really out of it, aren't I? What would the night bring? He thought. Once he finished, he dried himself with a towel that may or may not belong to one of his teammates. The look inside the bag was clothing. There was even a device. How generous of them. He slipped on the pair of boxers and shirt and he gathered his bundle of clothes. He stepped into the room with a single target in mind. There's ladies here. Someone complained. He didn't bother to look at her as he headed straight to his bed and crawled under the covers. And why do you smell like my shampoo? Awake early? I can ask the same thing, Blake replied. This was a new start and it would be a better life. Purah smiled and talked while she combed her hair. I like the early hours, I've gotten used to it. Besides, there's no better time to exercise. Blake could see that. Purah was well in shape and an apparent prodigy. The invincible girl, that title and all those praises sung came from somewhere. What about you? She asked. Blake glanced at the book she was reading and adjusted her hairbow. I like the morning quiet, she could go without the snores, but solitude had to be let go if she were going to stay here. Purah gave a nod and continued her morning ritual. Blake resumed her novel. Purah left after she finished what she had to do. The invincible girl. Not entirely what Blake expected, a bit too friendly. Weiss Schnee, the heiress of the despicable Schnee Dust Company. She was as Blake expected if she had to be courteous. Naruto Uzumaki. Nothing to expect. She hadn't seen nor heard of him before they met yesterday. Demon PBW. That's what they would be for next 4 years, starting today. It was a shame that the room was small. If only it were larger. She felt herself smile, this was what progress felt. If only if it were bigger. The time passed, and before she knew it, none of the other two had awoken with the approaching start to classes. She was also reminded that Naruto had to meet with the headmaster before it started. He should be woken up, and besides, he would appreciate it. People looked peaceful in their sleep, but Naruto was the opposite on the spectrum. He tossed around on the bed, a fist tightly wounded on a metal headband. A nightmare perhaps. She placed a hand on his shoulder to wake him. He gave a jolt and his eyes shot open. They gazed in the ceiling for several blinks before it settled on her. Blake averted her eyes when he sat up from the bed, he was only wearing briefs. And yes, his stomach was muscled. However, she didn't come here to ogle boys. This was a new step in her life and that was cause enough to be in a good mood. She gave an inkling of smile. Good morning, thought I should wake you up. Yeah, thanks, Naruto looked at his feet, his belongings placed haphazardly on the floor. He rubbed his eyes and yawned. No problem, Blake smiled. She wondered if he was a faunus with the whiskers on his cheeks, but she had never seen something like it. You need to see the headmaster. Did you want help? Right, yeah, I no idea where he might be. He picked out the uniform from his bag and started to dress. It shouldn't be hard to find him. He struggled with how many parts there was to the male uniform. Blake was dressed in the girl's version. It granted an official feeling to attending Beacon. It wasn't a terrible fashion either. He had put on the entirety of the uniform, save for the tie, in which he frowned. You don't know how to do a tie. No, I'm not even going to try, he threw it back into the bag. Instead, he put on the headband. She chuckled. When do classes start? 9, they had spare time. Blake had gone back to her book, seeing as he had to get ready. Oh, he went quiet, but he said words so quietly spoken that she was not supposed to hear. What now? She tried to ignore him, to respect his privacy. However, it was hard not to look when she heard cloth being ripped apart. Naruto tore his pants with a knife, and on his bed, other items. Are those ninja stars? She asked, surprised at the sight. Yep, I should have given something to Purah yesterday, he replied. He had finished his cutting. He wrapped the orange cloth around his blade and with a spool of wire, did the same thing. The hilt was purple, so it didn't exactly mesh well with orange. What happened to your scabbard? No idea, lost it in a fight, Naruto replied. He tied the makeshift item around his pants. I'm ready. Ozpin's eyes trailed up when the door opened. It revealed the interesting character from yesterday. Dressed in the school uniform without the tie. Naruto's appearance was a huge improvement. The haggard look replaced by clean clothes and a frown. There was something odd about him, but he couldn't place it. Behind him, one other familiar person. Blake Belladonna. She had an interesting history. A faunus, how peculiar that she hid her heritage. Ozpin took a sip from his mug. Good morning to you both, they gave their responses. Blake, you may wait outside if you wish, I doubt we'll be long. She nodded and closed the door as she left. Naruto stood in front, his arms crossed. Ozpin made a motion to sit and with silent steps, crossed the room to sit on the chair. We got lost a couple times, he said plainly. Understandable. Ozpin smiled. It is a large school, I myself get lost in these halls sometimes. Was his response. What did you want to talk about? Right into the matter. Talk in general. You're looking better than our encounter yesterday. Thanks for that. I really did need some rest. Ozpin nodded. It's also about your acceptance into Beacon, he didn't say anything, so Ozpin took it as an invitation to continue. He always liked this part, the school was a matter of pride to him. As you heard yesterday, Beacon Academy trains aspiring huntsmen and huntresses into capable warriors that can defend Vale from the grim, they are countless. I wanted to extend an invitation to you. Strange yes, as you already went through the initiation and formed into team. So, it would be unfortunate if you denied. Sure, he said. I did say I would when you gave me a bed, it seemed his answer hadn't changed, or he had always wanted to attend. Can I ask why? I mean, I showed up out of nowhere. Ozpin chuckled, that you did, but I make sure to extend an invitation to those who may contribute to the protection of others. Despite your state yesterday, I saw your capabilities. That does not include your arrival. The part of his blue eyes lit up. And how exactly did I arrive? Ozpin grabbed the scroll that was on his desk. The video was already on the section on Naruto's arrival. There was missing footage, having captured a portion of it. He pressed play and presented it to Naruto. Ozpin had seen the video several times. The boy's eyes watched the screen. There was a yellow glowing artifact. Large enough to encase a person, there was no uniform shape to it. Particles flowed into the air from the glowing item. It dissolved away, leaving Naruto in the water. I was wondering if you can explain that, I've seen many things, and this is one such thing that captures my interest. Naruto's eyes furrowed, he sat back and crossed his arms again. It might well, You don't know. Not exactly, I was kinda out of it, he replied. There was silence before he continued. Where am I anyway? You said Vale. Interesting. Vale is one of the 4 kingdoms of Remnant. Beacon Academy is situated near the city of Vale. He gave a blank look. Never heard of it. I mean I shouldn't because I'm from a different dimension. Ozpin took a sip from his mug. There was no sense of amusement in his eyes, it was still the same. Serious-natured, in a way. Can you explain how you arrived? I was fighting someone, she could go through dimensions and can force anyone to do the same. That sounds like a powerful ability. Yeah, he pointed towards the scroll. I don't know about the glowing thing that I came out of, but that technique may have been that. Naruto Uzumaki was a name that was not found anywhere. A ghost had walked into the school. Another dimension then, Ozpin said. Naruto only nodded. Are you going to return? He looked down at his hands, wrung them together and gave a quiet reply. I'm stranded. I can't do what she was able to do. Naruto's eyes were familiar. It was in most youth around his age. There might be an occasional exception, but he was not a part of those individuals. He was lost on what to do. That is all for now, classes will start soon. They returned to their room. It took half the time with the small familiarity. Weiss was still asleep on her bed, Pura was nowhere to be found. Is she a late sleeper? Naruto muttered. Blake sighed, it would seem so. He dove face first into his pillow. He turned around and gazed at the ceiling. I think she's used to a butler waking her up, Blake said. She made her own way toward her bed. I wouldn't be surprised. Really, why? She's the heiress to the Schnee company. Oh, he shrugged. Or tried to, but Naruto didn't seem interested. He leaned on his arms and looked at Blake. I'm hungry, is there food somewhere? She wasn't sure if he was serious or not and it showed. The cafeteria. Apprehension appeared on his face. You don't have pay with anything, do you? No. All his questions and doubts made her almost question whether the food was free. No, she said assuredly. You don't seem so sure. We're both first years, Blake frowned. She was the wrong person to ask on where everything would be located. Right, maybe Rice wants to eat. Rice? She snickered. You're calling her that? Yeah, whatever her name is. I like it. His lips twitched like he was going to smile, but it never finished. I'm waking her, Rice, get up, we're hungry. I suppose classes aren't long from now either, Blake added. Weiss groaned and she turned. Her voice thick with sleep, did you have to be so loud? Yes. Ugh, she sat up, her hair a natural mess. Blake decided to speak. We're wondering if you wanted something to eat before classes start. Weiss yawned, can you bring a plate, Ba? No. The white jagged lines that was scribbled on the dark green of the board. Curves and twists, unfamiliar lines and characters that was supposed to form into something comprehensible. Never mind, it was something, gibberish. The professor, a fat bearded man, never stopped talking. His speech flowed from one sentence to another in a long-winded and dull mess. Naruto had forgotten the last sentence's information because the professor had started another one. There was a special talent in being boring. It was exhausting, impressive, because everything was new to him. The professor turned his back to write more on the board. Naruto didn't pay attention whether it was another exploit. His focus was on something else. The question appeared which made him feel drained, how the hell could he understand their language? He couldn't read what was on the board. The Pizza Pie's notebook offered nothing either. Yet, he could understand the language. Perfect. Then, he decided that he'd rather think about something else. He sighed and listened intently to the teacher. He couldn't remember his name, nor did he want to. Ah, Professor poured as Weiss's hand went up to ask a question. He opened his own book to take down notes, it would have to be in his own written language. The pen pressed down and felt all his energy wilt away as he dragged it down. Naruto closed his eyes. The sounds of pens scratching along the surface of paper, the tippity-tap of fingers drumming on desks, the yawns and sighs. Everything felt distant. Remember these vital points, a cut can cause heavy bleeding, forcing yourself out of fights. He couldn't recall the names, but the locations were easy enough. Naruto looked around the classroom, many other students around struggled to listen. Pai and Rice were the only ones who seemed to be paying some attention, as the white-haired girl had been fervently writing since they arrived. Purah seemed bored but was still taking notes. This guy's teaching style was just dreadfully uninteresting. Many others were dozing off and a couple were asleep. He focused on the words of the fat professor and the stories or the lectures. The history of these creatures is relatively unknown. The Grim possess a trait that no other man or animal possess, that is. Naruto. What is it? He blinked, the worst had happened. I don't know. You don't know? But. That's common knowledge, Rai said to him, a frown on her face. Not common to me. Well then, Weiss. Soul, they lack a soul, Weiss replied. She shot an unimpressed look at him. An animal lacking a soul, it was something memorable. All things carried a soul back home, all things carried chakra. Now, how was it here? This place was weird. It wasn't finished either. Throughout the rest of the lecture, Naruto couldn't answer any questions that were directed at him. Because of that, he had noticed Rice had been glaring at him the more time passed that turned downright murderous. There was another memorable thing, a girl in front had drawn a crude drawing of the professor. He didn't understand what the title was, but the blonde beside her had laughed a loud laugh when she noticed it. Weiss gave a few mutterings of the drawing of how she disapproved of it. Not to mention how she shamelessly picked her nose and balanced the supplies she had. It was funny. His lips twitched. At least you're not like that. Weiss muttered. The professor continued to speak about how a huntsman must act and be. We'll have a demonstration on what are the traits that being a huntsman or huntress requires. Pork mentioned a cage, and something large settled inside it moved against the confines of its prison. This woke the class a little. The first hand up was Weiss herself, of which the professor gave a smile. Ah, but I didn't say it was a volunteer position. This one will be randomly assigned. It was like he announced the lottery and Naruto was feeling very unlucky. The black-haired girl with the red highlights seemed to be squirming in his seat in excitement. "Meme," she whispered repeatedly. Meanwhile the professor's eyes trailed throughout the room. Just pick already. Port's eyes settled on him, Naruto. I would like you to demonstrate if you wish, you may change into more appropriate clothing. Then you may face your opponent. What a surprise. He didn't see it coming at all. No. The girl below him said dejectedly. A few others beside her laughed at her. Good luck. Purah said beside him, smiling. He avoided looking into the green of her eyes. The other pair of clothes he had were trashed except his jacket. He might as well do it because Rice didn't seem so impressed with him. I'll stay like this, he decided to take off his jacket of the school uniform. He reached for Sasuke's sword that was settled under the desk but decided against it. He looked to Pai. Can you watch it? She blinked, sure, but you're not going to use it? He shook his head. Naruto didn't want to look at it right now. He had some kunai in his tool bag either way. He passed by the team before heading down to the professor. Naruto recalled their attention solely on him and the painted dummy hung on the stump. He had to get top marks to match his rival. Naruto vaguely recalled wanting to hear the class sing him with praise. Reality had garnered contrasting results. At least this won't end in the same way. Naruto crossed his arms as he stood in the center of the clearing. "If you are confident, then by all means," the man said. He stood by the cage with a large axe weapon. The beast inside was called a Burbadisk. As the name suggested, and like the aspects of Grim, it had 2 large tusks and 4 red glowing eyes and bone-like armor on its face and body. "Prepared?" Pork said. Naruto nodded, and Port released the cage that sealed the beast inside. The door blew open, and the beast centered on him. The Burbadisk charged him, jumping in the air with its large tusks. Naruto realized he wanted this very much. Action was familiar, it was easier, by a lot. Instincts moved his body. Naruto grabbed a hold of its tusks, and in a swift, smooth movement, Naruto swung the Grim over and slammed it into the floor. The floor cracked from the Grim's weight. He brought out a kunai from his bag and sunk it in the underbelly of the Burbadisk. Naruto finished it by sweeping his blade across the surface of its soft belly. It didn't bleed, just like the others. Only light trails of black smoke poured out from its wound. It disintegrated in a slow, sizzling manner. It was unnatural. Like it screamed that this thing wasn't from this world. Naruto placed his kunai back into his bag and looked at his hands. At least his strength hadn't failed him just yet. There was just something odd that he couldn't explain or even think about how that was. "Short, effective, good work," Professor Port replied. He clapped, which the rest of the class followed. When Naruto went back to his desk, he noticed his teammates' look of approval. "At least physically dependable," Weiss said. There was everything to see from this height. Down below, lights littered the walkways of the courtyard. It was dark, no moon hung in the sky. Clouds blocked the moon's luminescence. Some students littered the walkways below. Their incoherent conversation was heard. Another couple laughed together, it echoed in the air. There was a howl of wind behind him and he quickly looked behind. Only a dark horizon and the door that led inside. There was a loud hum from the light bulb. How long had he been here now? He honestly hadn't paid much attention to the passage of time. It could have been a day, it could have a week. What hadn't changed was that he now had another team. He was the captain. That was kind iffy on Ozzy's part. A shiver ran through him. He turned toward the light again and leaned against the railing. Was it just him, or was the hum from the light bulb getting louder with each passing moment? His gaze affixed, much like a moth entranced. Only one way forward. There was a crack, a pop, and the glass spilled against the concrete, tinkling as the shards fell. A brilliant flash, and the darkness invaded. A murderer lurked in this drowned light. His peak sense screamed at him to move. He lurched to the side, crashing into someone. There was a gasp. His eyes adjusted, the door in sight. He wanted to move, yet he seized, the shadows held him. It was easy to think of what ifs. What if he hadn't dodged, what if he moved the person behind him, and what if there wasn't any darkness? So many other possibilities that might have happened. Laughs broke him out of the mold. The world returned to normal. His arms trembled, and they wouldn't stop. His heart felt like might leap out of his chest. Rather on his person, he focused on excited yells down below, a laugh, a curse, more laughing. He swept a shaky hand through his hair and thought of other things. Bail. Beacon Academy. Team NPBW. A new team as soon as he lost his old one. How strange. Naruto focused on the chakra inside him. He couldn't feel it. Chakra was his lifeline, so it was still there, but unusable. He wondered what the extent of his injuries were, he felt back to normal. He held his hand out, his palm facing upward. The fundamentals of forming his technique came to him. The thousands of needles pierced into the center of his stomach. It didn't stop there, it trailed up of his arms. This was all that mattered, there was nothing but the pain. Pulsating with every heartbeat. "Fuck," he cursed. It didn't stop, he shouted more. A wave of fatigue hit him, he felt breathless. What the hell was that? The air grew colder and the night more prevalent. The talking had disappeared, replaced by distant nocturnal creatures. The feeling in his arms settled down, being replaced by an awful numbness. Naruto recalled his knowledge on chakra. Sometimes it didn't work if chakra was low, or you just died. He never recalled a stinging pain. Though, perhaps that was the full negative effects of his technique. Better this than everyone dead, so he couldn't complain. Free food, free bedding. All he had to do was go to classes. Though he couldn't read and write their language. He'd probably might get kicked out soon. He might as well stay. Someone bumped into him, he didn't turn to look who it was, a mumbled apology, and that was the end. Students came and went, talking and laughing, as they found their seats in the cafeteria. He was at a loss on where to go. Someone nudged his elbow, the red-haired girl passed by, smiling, "You look lost, they're over here." Purah had a tray of food in her hand, which reminded that he had one too. He shrugged and followed. He yawned, having barely slept last night. I found a seat and he plopped down beside. He poured himself a bowl of cereal. It didn't look appetizing. "Good morning, by the way." She smiled. But it was not, and he was petty enough to not add to his response, "Morning, pie." Her green eyes blinked several times. "Pie?" "Yeah," he focused on the bites of the cereal. "Sugary." Weiss interrupted his not so good morning, she didn't improve upon it, nor she did make it any worse. She looked to him with her nose held high. "She has a name." He shrugged, and it was Blake that spoke for him. "Don't be jealous, he has a nickname for you too." "Is that so?" she asked, her gaze turned to cold fury. "Do tell, we're nowhere near being that familiar with one another." "Bryce." She flinched and looked so insulted, he almost found it funny. The nerve. "Never call me that again, and don't dare speak to me unless it's an apology." Weiss turned her head, her sideways ponytail bobbed from side to side. Blake found this priceless. Instead he focused on his dish. He wasn't too hungry, but he had to eat something. He forced the cereal into his mouth, usually doing that gave him an appetite, but it only worsened it. God knows why he was still here. He solved it. He had nowhere to go. Wait, he had already solved this mystery some other night. Did I hear that right? You call the Puranikos pie? Classic, it was a voice he didn't recognize. He glanced to his right, did these other people just arrive, or did he lack any sort of spatial awareness? He was supposed to be a ninja. See everything and all that crap. It was a blonde. There was an energy as she leaned forward with a hand on her chin. She gave a playful smile. "Hi. So, this is the elusive leader of Team NBPW. Don't think we've met before, name's Yang Xiaolong. Nobody told me that you were such a tiger." He looked at her, forcing down his food. "Tiger. Naruto. You can call me that if you want." "Don't mind if I do," she winked. Not intimidated by the invincible girl. What would her cereal fans think? She laughed again, which embarrassed the girl beside him. He looked at the cereal box, a red head with a bronze gear was present on the box. He looked at Pi, then back at the box, then at Purah again. I didn't even notice that. You'd think the cereal would be decent," the blonde had laughed. Purah strained a smile, "It's not a healthy cereal." "So, I have a famous partner?" "Not that famous." "Famous enough for people to ask for your autograph?" he asked. Her awkwardness increased. "Sometimes." He probably looked like that whenever someone had asked him for his autograph. Of course, that time frame was after when he had defeated Nagato. Kind of weird, right? I never got used to it. Though, he hoped in her case it wasn't because of a feeling of why the fuck are you smiling at me like that, and why should I do this because you guys treated me like less than trash type of deal. Yeah, it wasn't pretty. The blonde girl whose name he had already forgotten snapped her fingers. "Oh, are you famous too?" "In my community," there was a twinkle in her eye, her mouth opened before Rice interrupted. "Like a famous baby. As interesting as this is, class is starting soon." Which killed any conversation as everyone got rid of their dishes or any garbage they had. Naruto looked at the bowl of cereal, it was empty. The taste was that forgettable. The busty blonde chick gave her attention to the others beside her. They were having a conversation. His other teammates had been talking with him. He hadn't known any others were talking. It was like apathy leaked from him. Purah had noticed this about her partner. One moment he looked dreadfully uninterested. He would freeze, a statue, then his face would contort in puzzlement, his brows furrowed like he was thinking hard about whatever the professors had said. Multiple times he would pick up his pen before he set it back down. His notebook going unwritten. Weiss had noticed this, if her remarks was of any indications. It was a daily occurrence. Like the professor's questions for him. His knowledge seemed limited and Purah tried to help. She wondered if anyone else had observed his changes in mood. The oddity in his initial appearance was still unanswered. As she decided to find Naruto, John appeared with a grin. They seemed to have different classes, except for the one they heading to now. It had been busy for them all, they hadn't talked since the initiation. "Hey Purah, I wanted to say thanks again for catching me. I wouldn't mind falling for you again." He gave a confident grin. She smiled. "It's nice to see you again. School has kept us busy." She gave a nod. "I'd like to talk more, but I need to speak with Naruto." John blinked, sure." He went forward and tried to speak with Weiss. Naruto had been hanging in the back, walking alongside someone she recalled as Lyren. They didn't seem to be in the middle of a conversation. Purah slowed her pace until it matched them. "Naruto, mind if we talk?" Ren glanced at them and walked forward with a parting remark. "I'll leave you two at it." She watched him go. "Did I interrupt anything?" Nah. We were just walking next other, don't even know the guy's name." Purah didn't know where to start. Then she was reminded the inexperience with dealing with others. Why do you call me Pi? That. Because that's sort of close to your name. It's that simple. Well, I also forgot your name. Purah blinked, you forgot. He rubbed his neck, his lips forming a half smile before it disappeared as quickly as it came, sort of, it's just hard to say. No, it's fine. She replied, I'm actually glad. Why? He continued to look forward through the halls. It's just many people know me, but not really. It feels good that someone doesn't know me, their gazes met, but he broke it. I'm not from around here. Is there something else you wanted to talk about? It happened again. Like all emotion drained from him. Ah, fantastic. They were supposed to talk whatever might have happened to him, not about her. Awkward. I wanted to ask if you are well. Especially when we first met, it's just strange. Naruto stopped his pace, and she did too. Purah heard the other steps becoming distant. Her and Naruto went unnoticed, and the halls looked to be devoid of anyone else. He met her eyes again before they averted. I can explain that, I guess, you were in danger because of me. That was absolutely no problem. Anyone would have helped you. He was silent for a moment, his eyes not meeting her own. The truth is that I'm not fine at all. You just reminded me of a friend, somehow. Oh, well, she didn't quite know what to say. Saying if he was okay didn't seem like the best thing to ask. Especially when he said he wasn't fine. Is there anything I can do to help? He started to walk, his hands in his jacket. Purah walked alongside him and waited for his response. No idea. She frowned, but he continued. The reason I don't know your name is because I'm from an entirely different world. Which is why I randomly appeared there. A different, she paused. World. It sounded way out there. I wouldn't blame you if you didn't believe me, but that's why it might seem weird. She gave an uncomfortable laugh. Well, the test did start and it looked like you went through a lot. It felt like it, a hollow chuckle. I believe you, she replied. It makes sense in a way if you don't know who I am and of the questions the professors ask of you. Are you trying to convince yourself? No, if you say you are, then I have no reason not to. It was silent, there was no one else in the halls. Naruto sighed, you don't have to worry about me. You don't have to do anything at all. We're partners for the next 4 years. Would you stop me if I tried? No. Being alone has never no. Naruto hung his head, but despite his words his tone didn't change, thanks, eventually I'll get better. He stopped again, and he took a quick look around. There was an inkling of a smile. Do you know where we're supposed to go? I'm lost. It took her a moment to realize that he was talking about which classroom they were supposed to be in. Oh, it's this way. She replied. It wasn't. Everyone filtered out the amphitheater. There was a lot of seats turned to the stage with a huge television hung above it. The professor called everyone to change into their combat gear and return. Eventually, he was the only one here, minus the professor. The same woman from when he arrived. Which, or along that lines. She stood at the base of stage. She was tall. Seriously, it seemed everyone was taller than him by a decent margin. Pi towered over him, with only Rice noticeably shorter. Hopefully, he would grow taller over the next few years, cause he was feeling mightily inadequate. They must have grown them differently here. Damn. Like school all over again. Are you settling in okay, Mr. Uzumaki? As much as I can be, Are you not going to fetch your weapon? I said she'll grab it, seeing as I don't have a change of clothes for fighting. He replied. He had his jacket, but it was in bad shape. Her brow raised, a nickname? It seems you're already getting familiar with your team. He shrugged, if she counted calling nicknames because he forgot their actual names and calling them the first thing that popped into his head getting familiar with his team then okay. Now that was a thoughtful. The door opened behind him, instead of students that came through, it was Ozpin. This guy was tall too, taller than the woman. It's nice to you again so soon young man, Ozpin said. Well, I haven't left her anything. Indeed. I'm glad to see that. Good morning Mr. Ozpin. Goodwitch said. Good morning Uzumaki. Please walk with me. Naruto followed his command like the lost little dog he was. Yes, it's nice that you continue to stay. But I must say your potential is unknown because of your unique predicament. Have you told any others of your circumstance? One person so far, Naruto replied. They reached where Witch was standing, it was likely she knew about the dimension gap between them. It wasn't like his circumstance was some deep dark secret. Nor did he tell Ozpin to keep it hidden. Good. I'll have to ask you from freely sharing this information other than your team, he said. Have you noticed disparities? So my guess. He did learn about aura, about how it was essentially chakra. There was also something akin to bloodlines limits here, called semblances. Ozpin nodded, Glinda, would you do the honors? Of course, please stay still. Glinda approached him and Naruto had to lilt his head up. She placed a hand on his chest and on his shoulder. She closed her eyes in concentration. One moment. Another. Another again. Her brow creased. Was something supposed to happen? Naruto asked. That was anticlimactic. Yes, but it didn't care to explain. Ozzy said. Linda took several steps back and began an explanation. Aura is the physical manifestation of a person's soul. With that in mind, it can also protect a person. It can be visible in some circumstances, taking form of a color around a person. You might notice this in today's lesson. It was like chakra, and his was yellow. He had learned a few things since he arrived. The difference was that chakra didn't provide a layer of protection. That would have been useful to have. Life-saving, even. Linda adjusted her glasses and continued, you have no physical manifestation of aura. Which should be impossible, unless you have no soul. No soul, that's gotta suck, he replied. He was ignored. However, there is something which possesses a different feeling than that of aura, but still familiar. This only lends credence to your claim. I suppose that power takes form differently from your from. Well, I had no reason to lie, Naruto replied. He placed his hands in his pockets. And yeah, I'm not excited to be a special case again. From housing a once terrible power to having none. Quite the contrast in specialness. Also, where the fuck was Kurama? Honestly, he should be dead if Kurama was gone. Who saved him and placed him in this dimension? The last sight was the moon. Thinking more of this would only give him headaches. Nonetheless, I look forward to discussing this in further detail in the future. Ozpin said before he turned to Goodwitch. For now, please continue with the classes. Are you certain? Glinda replied, her lip settled into frown. Naruto heard the door open repeatedly, students began to fill the amphitheater. Some of their gaze curiously set on them. Of course, this is a school dedicated to training future huntsmen and huntresses. It should continue as such, regardless of circumstance. If individuals cannot withstand the dangers here, then they should not have chosen this occupation. Linda gave a nod and Ozpin walked toward the exit. He had one thought. Was he going to fight someone? Judging by the fact he was now standing on the stage, yes, he was. Witch had told him to stand there and now he was the focus of the class. Mr. Uzumaki had volunteered to be first opponent. The first order will show Naruto Uzumaki vs. Pura Nikos. Miss Nikos, please join him on the stage. Pura joined him on the stage. She heard whispers of the invincible girl. I can't think of a reason why that is, Naruto said. He found her gaze and she gave a smile. No offense, Weiss interrupted. But I'm certain you will be no match for Pura. Thanks for believing in me, Rice. Stop calling me that. Pura hid her smile as she stepped up to the stage. Your jacket, Naruto, but fight well you too. Blake said, her book on her lap. Naruto followed on her suggestion and discarded it on the corner. Pura wasn't sure what to say, so she didn't. Glinda looked at them both and gave a frown. They both heard the furious tapping on Glinda's scroll. Now, Witch said. The match will be over when I say it's over. Once I give that signal, you will stop immediately, understood? Understood. Good. You may begin when I say so. The professor stepped off the platform, she could feel the start just a breath away. The students knew it too. There was a cheer for her, calling out her name, and then another, which led to a few more. Naruto shifted his weight and eye-gazing into the stands and looked back and raised a brow. Simple actions that spoke volumes. He was not the favorite coming in and he was not deterred by it all. Hey Naruto. Yang yelled. She leaned back against her seat, a leg rested on her thigh, like she wanted to enjoy the view. Go get him Tiger, he cracked a smile and shook his head. At least, there was one person cheering for him. Let's do our best. Any guidelines? Pura said. No, he trailed, firearms. Pura smiled and nodded. That's fair. She drew her own weapons, sword and shield. Its weight was such a familiar presence. An extension of her limbs. She missed how it felt in her hands. Naruto drew his own, or rather tired too. He fumbled with it as he tried to take it out. There were a few quiet laughs and even Pura had to restrain herself. Take care of your weapons. A girl yelled out in anger. Ruby rose, Yang's little sister. Get a proper scabbard. Okay, for real this time, he said, with sword in hand. He held his hand out for whatever reason before he blinked and withdrew. She didn't understand, but not at all the same. Linda interrupted, you may begin. Those were the magic words. It was like a weight lifted off her shoulders. Her heart calmed and all the uneasiness from moments prior washed away. There was only her and the opponent. Nothing else outside the ring mattered. She noticed the change in him too. A normal sight to see a hung head and almost general dreariness that hung about him. It disappeared, replaced by a spark in his eye and confidence unseen before now. Pura cracked a smile, her heart fluttering. She couldn't remember the last time she'd seen that look. She waited in stance, quietly gauging him. She recalled the times in tournaments. Her opponents would be eager or even nervous. She would have seen it, but there was nothing here. Pura made the first move. Closed the distance between them. Blade met blade. She disengaged for a moment before going back in with stabs and swipes of her sword. Pura pushed forward, pressing him back from her onslaught. She made her maneuvers complicated, but even as she put more strength and speed behind her attacks, they continued to meet. He retaliated, knowing he was a few feet from edge. His foot shot forward and met her shield. Clang. She gasped, her arm went numb and staggered back several steps from the force of the blow. Naruto didn't give her the time to react as he amped up movements and strength. He was aggressive, trying to set the pace as he swiped and stabbed and blocked. She couldn't help but smile. She nicked him a few times with her shield during their fight, but no solid blows. She was kicked in the stomach and staggered back. The yellow shimmer of her aura surfaced for a moment. She grunted at the pain. He hit hard. They stared at one another, circling around the ring. Weapons in hands to clash once again. There was frown to her smile, and he narrowed his eyes. There was a lull to break and he was the one to do so. In the midst of their trades, he disarmed her. The blade clattered to the ground, she jumped back. Her hand reached out and her sword returned to her grip. Naruto froze, eyes widened. Pura calmed her breath, some of her limbs felt sluggish, but she could keep going. He smiled, "Oh, I get it now, you control metal so no wonder I couldn't hit you." He sheathed his sword, albeit with some difficulty. Pura was surprised that he figured it out so quickly. She finally responded, "You figured it so quickly. It's no wonder you're the captain." He frowned, "It's just experience. Then all the more deserving." Naruto didn't reply, instead he stood in a hand-to-hand stance. Next thing she knew, he was on her. She cleaved and he sidestepped a swipe and he stepped back. He threw his weight against her shield. He held firm, clinging to her shield. He pulled, he pushed. Pura twirled the blade in her hand, a backwards grip, and tried to stab to shake him off. A knife appeared in his hand and stopped it. Something swept her off her feet and she fell to the ground. Unrelenting, he kicked her and the stomach was sent several feet away. "That's enough," Glinda announced. The enchanting trance was broken. The spotlight turned off and the students appeared from the darkness. She lost. A smile. Naruto's hand appeared and helped her stand. "Thanks," she muttered. It appeared again, another gesture he made with his hand before he withdrew. "Sorry, just some old thing." "Oh, how does it go again? Like this?" she insisted. She tried to mimic what she saw. She waited, he pressed his lips together and completed it with some other gesture. "Does that hold any meaning?" "It means after a fight, that's we're still, a pause. Friends." "That sounds like a nice tradition," she replied, smiling. He finally smiled. "Yeah. Come here," Glinda said. Pura nodded and went over to the professor. After they were done, they returned to their seats as another couple took the stage. Weiss didn't look at him, but seemed begrudgingly impressed. That was a surprising outcome. "I apologize for doubting you." "She wasn't giving it her all," he replied. "Neither were you," Pura countered. "I used my semblance, while," she paused and hummed. He tilted his head, "I don't have one." Blake was the one to speak, "Perhaps you'll awaken it one day." Glinda announced another team that would fight. There was a difference, portraits appeared on the screens, and Glinda said that she would show them how they would get their aura levels on their scrolls. "I would like to guide this process, so please take out your scrolls and follow along. You will likely do this again in the future." His teammates took of their own respective scrolls. Weiss noticed he didn't bring out his. "I forgot mine." Team RRYN was a loud bunch. There was one person that said little, Ren. In contrast, as if to balance their rowdiness, Blake's team was quiet. Weiss was a picture of class and politeness until she broke that glass with a comment. Pura regarded the others that spoke to one another. Blake occasionally read her novel. Naruto stared into his cereal. It was interesting to see Naruto's complete disinterest in everything in Beacon. On some subjects, she couldn't but feel the same way. However, he was a different person when it came to a fight. One such example of RRYN was Nora's loud explanation of her bizarre dream of pancakes. She dragged it on until she asked everyone of their preferences. Naruto was broken out of his spell of staring deeply into his cereal. "I don't think I ever had pancakes." "What?" Like he had insulted her entire being. It was sacrilege. Somehow her enthusiasm was contagious. "Then I demand that you try it right now." He snorted, "Sure, okay. I don't why I keep eating this anyway." "Each piece must have a perfect blend of maple syrup and pancake." "Well, each pancake is great, some are better than others. You have to try Ren's one day because it's one of the best." "Okay." She cut out a piece that she presented to him, but she didn't give him the fork. Instead she held it out for him, he took a bite. "It's good." "Haha. See, another pancake lover." "It's no ramen though," he muttered to himself. He seemed to notice that someone else was seated beside him. "Do they serve ramen?" "I don't think they serve ramen in the morning," Pura said. "Well, they should. Not to mention, it's unhealthy." "That doesn't matter," he replied. He poked the box, making it teeter, especially when they have this thing. "I agree with Pura, we need more nutritious food." Blake rolled her eyes. Weiss would always voice her agreements with Pura, but the invincible girl never said anything despite her discomfort. "This ass," Naruto muttered. She almost laughed, and somehow, he noticed that. She tried to smooth her features, but he had a knowing look. "Perfect," she said quietly. She decided to put aside her novel for now, instead focusing on the assembled group. Naruto was being poked by Yang until he had enough. "I was ignoring for a reason," he lazily glanced towards the new intrusion. "And I was poking for a reason," she replied with an easy smile. "Hey Tiger, I noticed you haven't met someone," he sat up from his position. Pura squirmed in her seat, seemingly wanting to join the conversation, or any for that matter. Weiss seemed to be talking with Ruby, or rather Ruby was trying to talk to her. She decided to listen on Naruto's conversation. "You're taller. Aw, you're self-conscious of your height. Matter of fact, you're just like a little teddy bear. You'll see, one day I'll be taller. Then you'll regret the joke." Blake couldn't recall much of her captain. He always seemed to fade in the background. "What? Yang? Why are you grabbing me?" Yang grappled with her sister. She laughed as the girl's legs dangled on the table as she was forcibly brought to sit beside Naruto. "Here you go. This is my sister Ruby, isn't she the cutest?" Ruby's pale skin was flushed red, her lips trembling. "Hi. Hello," he replied. An expected reply, he never said much when he was introduced. "Well," Yang interrupted, rolling the word, "this is awkward, I guess this is what happens when you put a quiet guy and an awkward sister together." "I'm not awkward," Ruby whined. "You couldn't say anything," Naruto said. "But you didn't say anything either." "I know, but I didn't want to." "Well, that's just mean of you." "Much better," Yang said, "obviously, since I broke the ice." Then they got into an argument. Blake returned to her novel. Sometimes she didn't know what to think of them, or at least, the others that didn't include Weiss. It was strange to think that this was the life that she entered. It was a lot of doing nothing. Naruto was uninterested in lessons, often muttering on how useless it would be, an opinion that Blake would share. However, he would never do his work. Pura seemed to never disagree about anything, or she was awfully patient. At the least, her fighting skills were phenomenal. "Stop, please, that hurts." She clutched a book when she turned her attention toward the commotion. Hardin had his grasp tightly around Aphronis's ears. She didn't notice Naruto had slipped away from his seat until he was in front of them. He had been silent. Naruto's hand latched on his wrist, and he squeezed. It was enough that Hardin's grasp on the girl was let. Hardin let out a pained grunt. It was a sound that was very satisfying to Blake. Naruto looked at him, again with that emotionless voice. "What? I thought you wouldn't mind." Hardin had a furious look to his eye. "Why did you do that, you little shit?" The height difference was significant. Hardin towered over Naruto. A few students noticed, even those from her team. "Oh," Naruto replied. "I guess people don't like their ears being pinched." Hardin reached for Naruto's collar and held him off the floor. This was going to be a fight, and Blake dearly hoped that it wouldn't end in Hardin's favor. Naruto's foot connected with Hardin's chest. There was an aura shimmer as he was launched several feet away. He tumbled and let out a groan. His friend stood up, the smirk on his face had disappeared. "Try it," Naruto shouted, like his words were laced with venom. He knew how well he could fight. A world of difference from the apathy moments ago. It was interesting to witness. Naruto pinched the bridge of his nose as he closed his eyes. "Tell me if they bother you again," muttering as he walked away. Blake couldn't help but smile. "Isn't Naruto afraid that he might get kicked out?" Weiss commented. The smile wiped away. It didn't change the fact that she had newfound respect for him. "I don't know, Hardin deserved it," Pura said. Pura wasn't so courteous of everything after all. The night carried a chill. The school was alit by the moon above. He never noticed how it looked, it was an alien sight, a reminder that he wasn't from here. It was fragmented, pieces large and small floated together. It was a quiet private place. Perhaps he had been going at it wrong. If he reflected on those longest days of his life, would he be better off? Yet, he could only think about the end. How the wind-edged blade felt against his spine, heavy and cutting, he felt its phantom pain. He flinched, his spine straightening rigid. One of the last things he remembered was its eruption and how it consumed him. However, that unspeakable pain came with something else. He laughed until he was breathless. How Kagaya had looked then, her pain, her confusion, her trembling, her curse. If he could relive a moment, it would be that memory. No victory ever felt close. It had been win or die. Win or die. They died and won. Except for him. Naruto didn't quite know when he had found himself on the floor like some sort of animal. He supposed that he was waiting. Like when he arrived. This is where he waited. He thought more of their last moments because there was nothing to do. The dust between his fingers, the dark night, and the last time he saw his village. So he waited until he realized he might have been wrong about thinking of those long nights. Perhaps it would be better to try and ignore it, but he wanted those memories of them. It was like a dam had broken. Those times when they sat down in a restaurant. Where Sakura would fawn over Sasuke, praising him for the job well done. Where he would argue with him over something he couldn't even remember, but it was over some stupid thing that didn't even matter. Times when he wondered how Kakashi managed to eat with his mask. All those memories that could have been, that should have been. Where all those stupid fights and arguments never happened, instead they would swallow their pride and make it time to remember. Simple stupid stuff. Yet, no matter how long he waited. He felt dry and there wasn't nothing inside him. Hollow. And he waited. And he waited. But it wouldn't come. Which kinda sucked. Ugh, I can't believe him. Weiss hopped on her bed, her arms crossed. He skipped the entire day. Really? We haven't noticed at all, Blake muttered sarcastically. Especially not after the complaints. Weiss didn't appreciate it, judging by the stink eye. I'm sure there's a good reason. Purah said, defending him. Oh really? What might that be? Weiss voiced. Purah's lips parted before they clammed shut. Exactly, Weiss commanded. He's literally all brawn and no brain. Is it because he doesn't care? I don't know the reason. Either way, you can't argue that he isn't committed to his studies, not even a little. That test we did a couple days ago, I didn't see him write a single thing on it. Naruto had stared at his paper and by the end of class, he had nonchalantly given it to the professor like he had gotten a perfect score. It was admirable how he managed to do it with a straight face. Blake sighed, I can't deny that. This is a school that all of us worked hard to get into. Exactly, Weiss said. Yet, the headmaster made him the leader of our team. I'm seriously doubting his decision. Blake probably wouldn't go that far. Well, the Beolds were the only source of judgment, he was quick, he was capable. Not everything had to be involved with academics. Purah. What's your opinion on Naruto? Weiss asked. Purah frowned, I think you should talk to Naruto. To Blake, it seemed that it was more a defense. It seemed Weiss didn't see that. Yes, exactly. I should do that, I don't think he's fit for to being the leader of this team. The captain should be held to higher standard and he hasn't reached that. Blake frowned, was she attempting a coup d'etat? It was funny its own way. Was that possible? She had to choose, her preference would have to be Purah. There's no way Weiss should lead. At least he wasn't filled with complaints. At least he proved himself. Blake sighed heavily, this was an annoying day. Tomorrow should come. I'm going for a walk. Blake said, she gathered a book that she wanted to read and walked past both her teammates and out the door. It would clear her head. Hopefully she wouldn't see Cardinor as little goon. Blake reached into her pocket and felt around for her little good luck charm. It was still in her pocket and she continued to keep it inside as fiddled it between her fingers. It helped clear her mind. Blake wandered the halls of the school. She passed by some windows. The sky a deep blue that grew darker with each passing minute. She decided to wander the school to get used to the halls and see what it had to offer. She had a lot of time to think about her life here. It was strange, was it going to be like this for the next 4 years? It was hard to answer, including when she became a full-fledged huntress. Naruto had skipped the rest of classes after that little incident in the cafeteria. Perhaps she should start doing the same, if only to annoy Weiss. After some time, she decided that she had enough of thinking. She had a book to continue reading. It would be nice to get lost for a while. It was a large school, there were many places to be alone. So, she went for one of the rooftops. Her steps echoed in the stairway. She liked the silence, she enjoyed being alone. Being with others, well, it could be fun. She hoped her team didn't mind it in the years to come. When she reached the top, she was surprised to find someone else. They laid on the ground and she was about to leave when she recognized him. His face was blank even when she walked into his field of vision. There was only one question to ask, why are you on the ground? Hi, it's Blake, they had been a team for a while now. Right, you were against the light, I guess. Naruto replied noncommittedly. You know Weiss isn't pleased that you skipped the rest of classes today. Oh, was his response. How much? Blake chuckled, on second thought it was more humorous than annoying, oh just a little. That much huh? Blake wondered if she was like her, a person who preferred solitude at times. She found herself leaning on the wall beside the entrance of the stairwell. Contemplating her newfound life in Beacon Academy, hopefully one that would resolve her sins. I'm glad you helped that girl, Blake muttered. Brave of you. Yeah. She could have done without that, it was odd when he said that. It didn't fit of what she'd seen of his personality, but what does it have to do with being brave? You weren't concerned about defending a Faunus. Naruto finally decided to sit up. He squinted, an almost accusing look on his face. What the fuck is a Faunus? She bumped her head against the brick wall. What? It was earnest, yet so confused. He looked at her with expectance. What do you mean what's a Faunus? She frowned, what kind of a question was that? Is this a bad joke? No, he said plainly. I'm from a different place, another dimension. I don't know anything at all. That sounded even crazier. Yet as he continued to stare at her with a straight face for long moments, she began to doubt her doubts. Was that possible? It would explain how Purah was defensive of him. It would explain that he was ignorant. She had those rabbit ears, that's a Faunus. That girl had rabbit ears. Now it seemed like a terrible joke, but his face felt like there was some authenticity to his confusion. How did you not notice that? I wasn't paying attention. You weren't paying attention. I wasn't paying attention. They stared at each other for another few long moments. You do know that it sounds ridiculous, right? He shrugged, does it? That's a regular thing where I'm from, I don't know if it's normal here. Don't ask me about language because I don't know either, he said. She blinked, she can believe him or not. But she couldn't just deny everything he said, so she might as well just listen. Naruto scratched his head and looked contemplative, you still didn't answer me. So, you don't know what issues the Faunus face? He gave a nod. Blake decided to humor him, as well as herself. She took a moment to think of what a good summary might be, there was a lot of things. Too much. Blake explained it, their appearances, she explained the racism they faced, how they were second class, how an organization helped nothing with that image. Oh, Naruto thought for a long time, he scratched his chin. Well, that's stupid. That stupid was his response. Naruto sat up, staring. Who cares about how a person looks? But I can't really say much seeing as we had 4 huge wars in a short time. I don't know about history here. Knowing that, would you still help a Faunus? I've met a lot people who look different. A guy who used his own bones, other people with horns, wings, no pupils, and whole lot of other things that I can't even think of. Blake, that's a normal thing there. He said. He looked back at her, still in the same position. Is that why your bow twitches? She flinched. I don't know what you're talking about. His face was emotionless. How did he even notice such a small detail? Yes, you do. He looked back up at the moon again, because there wasn't much else to look at. For some reason, there was a part of her that believed him, despite how outlandish it seemed. The book in her hand was forgotten. So, you told Purah, it's no wonder she defended you. Defended me from what? Weiss. Oh. He replied. Yes, the reason my bow twitches is because I'm a Faunus. Blake swallowed nervously, he had defended that girl. For whatever reason she decided that she believed him. Oh. Barely a month in and she was going to reveal this to him. She was her team leader after all, and she would have to eventually show the rest of the team. Blake wanted to get along with them, even Weiss. Her hand tugged at the knot of her bow, pulling it off to reveal the hidden cat ears. She was proud to be Faunus, but ashamed of what the White Fang had done. Naruto still sat, his brow raised curiously, his blue eyes glanced once at her ears. It was nothing more than that, she expected more glances, even shock. Something tells me this was supposed to be dramatic, he said. I don't see it. It was almost humorous in a way. Still, I can see that this means a lot to you. Trust goes both ways, doesn't it? Blake said. She laughed at the awkwardness that she felt. The tension she felt earlier wisped away. She really did expect something like you're a Faunus. Or why were you hiding this? You're different, aren't you? I'm one of a kind, Blake. I never really took you for the Weiss type. He hummed. This other world Naruto was from, it sounded like an impossible place. Was the divide so large between Faunus that it sounded like that? Though, the large-scale wars he had mentioned. It must have its own problems. Another day inside Ozpin's office. They stared at one another in a game of look away or who blinked first. Do you know why you're here? Something bad. That was his best detective skills at work. In a way. Ozpin swirled the cup in his hand and he took another sip. You're in an interesting situation. Your grades, at least concerning written assignments, are 0. Yeah, I don't hand them in. Or apparently not at all, may I ask why? Can't read or write. That would explain it. He didn't seem at all surprised, in fact he was amused. Ozpin gathered a pencil and paper and slid it across the desk before it was right before it. Can you show me? Naruto gazed at the pencil for a moment before he picked up. He twirled the pencil between his hands as he thought on what to write. A brief smile appeared as he quickly wrote the characters required for "School sucks." Then he presented the piece of paper. Ozpin looked for a long while as he inspected the piece of paper. Interesting. Tell me, I've watched a recording of your spar with Miss Nikos. Despite having no aura, you weren't afraid in getting injured. You identified her semblance, already having a name for it. Do you possess any abilities? I used to. Not anymore though, I lost all that when I injured myself. What were those abilities? Plenty. I could manipulate wind, I could manipulate fire, lava, sand. Bunch of other stuff too, but I'd rather not get into it. You can manipulate elements just like that. I guess, but I don't really know enough about aura and semblances to compare them. It was named chakra, everyone had it, just not everyone became ninja. Naruto watched Ozpin lean back on his fancy chair, it even swiveled. He wished he had a chair like that, it was probably comfortable. For now, I think I will let this pass. Ozzy said. It would be in your best interest to learn how to read and write if you're unable to return to your dimension. He didn't know how he learned to read and write in his language, it felt like it was natural or that it was so long ago. Why didn't whatever magic that made him instantly learn their spoken tongue make him instantly learn their written word? That'd be smart. Otherwise he would be fumbling around staring at sheets like in the Chunin exam. Why? Naruto asked. The man smiled, like the answer was right before him. You're a unique individual. One piece of advice, you should be careful on who you reveal your origins to. Now that he thought about it, it felt a little creepy. Here he was sitting on his bed while 3 girls slept in their beds. Then again, his own bed was here, and this was his room too. He turned his head up when one of the girls let out a deep breath, but Blake didn't stir. It was weird sharing a room with 3 girls. The room was dark, the sun hadn't shown itself just yet. Judging by the gray sky outside the window, it was close to sunrise. Naruto fiddled with the device in his hands. The scroll he had been given by Ozpin since he first arrived. He hadn't touched it at all, other than using it to enter his room. He turned it over several times before finding a small switch. The translucent tablet turned white for a moment, illuminating the room. That worked, I think. It continued to play with the device. It was intricate, the screen able to extend further apart. It was a touch screen. He saw a picture of himself when the screen booted up. Ozpin had him take a portrait shot a couple of weeks ago. He felt a moment of triumph well inside him. There were characters beside his portrait, he could only assume his name. Then that feeling of triumph disappeared as quickly as it came when he realized that he couldn't read. That was the end of that. Naruto placed the scroll beside him and he sat there. He couldn't sleep even if he wanted to. Naruto sunk under his covers and stared at the white ceiling. It was decorated like someone pressed a brush and let the paint dry. Which made little protruding bumps on the ceiling. He decided to count it. Until golden rays filtered through the curtains. He couldn't stay cooped up inside any longer. Which was surprising. Because he had let his ass get dragged around to classes without much protest. Not to mention being enrolled into this school. Here he was dragging his ass somewhere to do something. The objective of food wasn't enough anymore. Weiss watched him. The captain of Team NPBW. He flowed from one movement into another. His feet glided from step to step. He sped and slowed, but always smooth. He was balanced and experienced. Weiss always had to remind herself of her training. Which way to stand and how to carry herself. Yet, Naruto had no hesitation and no pause that gave that indication that he gave his own pep talk. It wasn't just a small set of movements either, they ranged from simple to more complex maneuvers. Weiss couldn't help but feel envious at how natural he made it seem. Naruto had fought against Yang the other day. He had won the fight in pure hand-to-hand combat. She recalled him getting tripped, landing on his back. Yang had given a victorious yell as she tried to land a punch that cracked the stage when it landed. Naruto as quickly as he fell had dodged it. Fire appeared around Yang's hair. Her features settled into a scowl. Her teeth grit together and had let out a curse. That was when Weiss had figured out it was now personal. Her curses to let himself be hit cemented that thought. Despite that, Naruto had continued to dance around her. He whittled her aura down until the fight had been called to a stop. Other than that trip, Yang hadn't landed a solid hit on him. Naruto was a gifted fighter, as much as Per. Now if only he wasn't such a dunce. This team would be the greatest in all history of Beacon. Weiss was going to make sure of it. Naruto finally had the graces to stop, especially when she was noticed earlier. He swept a hand over his brow, perspiration clinging to his hand. His expression settled into that perpetual frown he carried. "So, is this where you have been every morning?" she asked. He looked to the arena, he inspected the dark dirt that he had been unearthed from his movements. Not exactly. I have to admit that you actually looked graceful for a moment, like a dancer. You mean I don't already? He placed his hands on his hips. She didn't expect this, excuse me. Nothing, he waved it off. He walked toward her, but only to grab a bottle near where she stood. I wish I could say the same thing for your academics. He smiled when she expected a more contrasting reaction. People didn't seem to like the truth at all. I'm pretty bad at that. Why aren't you out in the city? It's the weekend, isn't it? He was self-aware. I don't have to be out in the city every weekend, she replied, perhaps a little too quickly. Pura was gone when she awoke. Blake was never interested. She didn't want to go to town alone again. You know, it's kinda nice talking to you when you're not on my back all the time. Weiss looked away. Oh yes, I'm assuming from all the numerous conversations we've had. Oh right, that's true. Then again, I barely talk to anyone. I've only responded to people. He flashed a smile. Is there something you need, Rice? Weiss immediately felt agitation boil within her. She took a breath to help cool off before she spoke. I'm not like Purrit. I'd much prefer that you call me by my given name, thank you very much. Weiss Weiss. He frowned and mouthed her name several times before shrugging. I'm not sure how Purrit puts up with that. Her nickname? She likes it. She shook her head in disbelief. There was no way. It was a ludicrous idea. How did you even come up with these stupid names? Naruto took this question earnestly. A couple reasons. Your name was weird to pronounce and I was starving, so I was thinking about food. So, that's where rice and pie came from. It only served to annoy her. You're telling me that our nicknames originate from you having an empty stomach? He only had a sheepish smile. The audacity. Don't you have any respect? Naruto folded his arms and his brow crease. Like an interesting puzzle had been laid out before him. Instead of a response to her question, he ignored it altogether. You know, I have no idea why they call you Ice Princess or Snow Angel or whatever it is. It's not fitting. Ugh, don't remind me of those nicknames. She placed her hands on her hips. And what do you mean by that? Well, you're pretty fiery, I guess. I don't really know how to explain it. She rolled her eyes. Don't tell me you're trying to flirt with me too. That's something I actually liked about you. Naruto gave a blank look. I'm just saying what I noticed. You work harder than everyone else. And you're always on my back. Weiss was silent. She had gone off track, but at least she had noticed it. Naruto shrugged. Anyways, I'm just saying those nicknames make no sense. She was then reminded why she wanted to talk to him in the first place. How did it even get to this? She gathered herself, bringing herself as tall as she could. Instead, he spoke before she could. What do you mean that's the only thing you liked about me? She scoffed. Oh please, don't act like you don't know the Schnee name. So many boys were aware of the value of her name. John, for example. You and Blake are fortunate that you happened across Weiss, Schnee and Purinaikos on the same team. Though, I will commend your fighting skills. That will only help in the future. When Team NPBW is going to be famous, you'll see. There was a small look of awe on his face. He must have just realized, who couldn't have? Huh? What? She asked. Nothing, you just reminded me of a memory, that's all. Weiss cleared her throat since they were on the subject. I wanted to talk about something important. Naruto looked at her before gazing at the visage of the school. We've been talking a while now. What's something you had in mind? There was a fragment of a smile on his face rather than the frown. Compared to his usual melancholy. I don't think you're the correct choice for captain of Team NPBW, Weiss said. His expression didn't change. He carried no visible reaction, almost like he expected it. What do you mean? Naruto asked. You know what I mean. I mean why? She gave a brief pause as she gathered her words. You put no effort into your studies, you don't take notes. You failed the last exam that we had. Frankly, I think that you just don't care at all. Or that you think you're too good for this place. I will say that you're good at fighting, but not everything revolves around that. To me, a good captain should be able to set an example for the people they lead in many other ways that does not include fighting. Weiss took a deep breath after her speech. His expression was like all those days spent in the classrooms. Gazing at his blank notes with an empty gaze. See? You care a lot. His blue's eyes looked different for a moment. You're right that I don't put any effort into my studies. What else? It was refreshing on how he just accepted it rather than just denying the truth. It was strange. She didn't know how else to react. I could go on, but I think I'll stop there. The point is, I don't think you're fit to be a leader. It would be better for the future of our team if there was a new captain. He was silent for a little while, his expression unreadable. Weiss held no doubt that he was contemplating the words she had spoken. Ozpin makes that decision. So, we should probably go see him. He suggested. Naruto picked up his sword and strapped it to the terribly handmade sheath to his waist. It was surprising. Wait, you're just agreeing with this? Yeah, he replied. Who do you think should be the leader? Be honest. I expected you to be upset. He waved her off. Is that what you wanted to do? No, of course not. This isn't something a person would like to hear. He paused. Right, but no, I'm actually happy. His eyes focused on the school of Beacon, directly down a decorated stone pathway. There was the sound of others practicing near the other fields. Happy? But being a captain would be an honor. He looked at her, you didn't answer the question, who do you think should be the new leader? Weiss frowned, either Purr or myself. He smiled, I think you should be. For this, she had no reply, but only to skulk and follow. She didn't understand it. This was not the way she expected it to go. Ozpin called them inside once he heard the polite knocks. Naruto Uzumaki and Weiss of Team NPBW. The team had an interesting collection of backgrounds. There was something strange about Naruto, something Ozpin couldn't put into words. Especially about Chakra that he described. He was just one of the notable individuals in first year. Have a seat, how can I help you too? I feel like I'm in here all the time, Naruto muttered. Familiarly, he sat down on the seat. Yes, it appears so. As a matter of fact, there's something else that I wish to speak to you about. After this discussion we're about to have. Sure, there was a brief silence, then Naruto glanced at Weiss. Weiss cleared her throat. Yes, Mr. Ozpin. I would like to discuss the topic of leadership with our team. It would be beneficial if there was a change in captains. Interesting topic. He took a sip from the hot cocoa that he had in his hands. Ozpin looked to Naruto and was received with a nod. Oh, and why is that? Weiss cleared her throat. Personally, as well as Blake's opinion, felt that he hasn't held up to the standards of being captain. He may be physically capable, but that performance doesn't mirror his academic studies, quite simply, he doesn't fulfill that role well. Ozpin leaned back on his chair. Comfortable enough to sit on it for long hours on end. While academics wasn't a large factor in leadership, it did play a part. There were other contributing factors to a captain. However, judging by this, Naruto hadn't shared the fact he was illiterate. Leadership was ripe with scrutiny. You feel as though I was mistaken in my chosen captain of Team NPBW? Not how I would word it, but the idea is the same. Ozpin turned to Naruto, I haven't heard your thoughts on this issue. Rice is right. Ms. Shikni tightened her lips, bothered by the name. Explain. We have a different opinion in what it means to be a leader. But, I don't think I'm the right person to be leading right now. Ozpin drank another sip. He had heard concerns from some of the professors over Naruto's disposition. It might be a case of stress over assignments, or life issues, or a combination of the two. It was a usual case in students, nothing new at all. Of course, this particular student was from another dimension. He seemed to accept whatever had befallen him. It was unlikely school-related, which left life issues. Naruto could only help himself and must be willing to accept help. Otherwise, the issue of leadership in Team NPBW was more pressing. They waited in silence, with patience. Ozpin felt it was no mistake that Naruto should be captain, but Naruto admitted he wasn't fit for the role. At least temporarily. It was an admirable admission. Naruto felt that he wasn't performing at his absolute best. So, it was only right in another appointment. Vishni, he said. Why sat up straighter. If you feel that Naruto isn't fit for captain, then who should replace him? I think the best fit would be either Purr or myself. I assume there was prior discussion, both nodded. That was good, this wasn't something done on a whim. What does Blake and Purr think about being inducted to the role of captain? Purr is open to the idea. Though, she said if she only had two, she replied. As for Blake, she said she had no particular interest in captain. You can ask them both if you wish. I don't think that will be necessary, what about you? How do you feel about becoming captain? Why sat up straighter than before, a contrast to Naruto who laid back in the chair. Though, it seemed he was a good mood, judging by the smile. I would strive to be the best captain that I could possibly be. An expected answer. Finally, he arrived to Naruto. His answer would contribute the most. Naruto, who do you think best fits the role? Weiss gazed at him, her hand squeezed around the armrest. If Rice wants to be team leader that much, I say give it to her. A stupefied expression appeared on Weiss, it seemed she wasn't expecting this outcome. Ozpin spoke, I suppose that settles it, Weiss, you will be the one leading Team NPBW. I hope that you won't take this lightly. She looked back to him. Oh, of course not, thank you. I'm honored to be appointed to such a position. Ozpin drank the last of his cup before he settled it on the table. Weiss didn't stand up, is there anything I can help you with? Yes, this is about Naruto's performance. Ozpin held a hand up for her to stop and he glanced at Naruto. He gave a shrug, go ahead. Yes, Naruto's performance. I assure you that is already being taken care of, Weiss. Due to Naruto's current illiteracy, Profess. Wait, Weiss looked shocked, she looked over to the blonde beside her. You can't read. How come, excuse me. He shrugged. Ozpin wasn't aware if Weiss knew about his dimension situation or not. It was a subject that Naruto would have to breach one day. Ozpin gave a cough that captured the duo's attention. Yes, that is a problem which is being settled, Weiss. The professors are creating alternative means for him to catch up, I've left it up to their discretion. Oh, she replied, there was a tinge of red of embarrassment on her cheeks. Weiss glanced at Naruto. I see. Ozpin spoke again, have you begun learning? Nope, Naruto said. I guess I haven't given the means to do so, Weiss, I hope your team can help with that. It would help cut costs. Yes, we will, Weiss replied quickly. Then, if that is all. I wish to have quick discussion with this young man. There's nothing more, thank you again. Weiss gave one last glance at Naruto before she got off the chair and exited the room. Naruto adjusted himself in his seat. What else? Only one thing, I think you noticed students leaving the premises to visit the city. Ozpin replied and was received with a nod. I'm sure that you wish to possess clothing of your preference as well as any equipment. Naruto blinked in confusion. Why are you helping me so much? Did he not realize? Have you thought about what I said in our last meeting? Not really. Ozpin chuckled. There would be many people interested you, Naruto. I don't think I have to say that not all would share my level of curiosity. Oh. I knew that. Naruto replied. Though, judging by his reaction, arms crossed and eyes looking away, he didn't. Otherwise, these are bursaries for students in need. You don't have to owe anything. If you're worried about giving back, your future occupation as a huntsman will be sufficient. It would be nice to have some clothes. Naruto muttered. Then, I'll take that as a yes. Now, if there's any other support you need, don't hesitate to come to me or any other professors. I think I'll be fine. The confident response. It was a weird day. Naruto wandered the halls of the school. He had done one of two things he wanted to do today. Training, if it could be called that. The other one was to care for Sasuke's sword because he realized he hadn't done that at all since arriving here. He peeked through doors but saw nothing what he wanted in them. He had heard there was some sort of place dedicated to maintenance of weapons. Judging by all the crazy cool and totally sweet weapons that everyone possessed, it would be an obvious thing to have. Maybe they had a scabbard, if not, he could go buy one whenever he went to the city. Problem. He couldn't read. He would have to ask someone for help or mindlessly wander forever. Naruto looked around the school, checking inside every classroom and closing the door when he found nothing. He could have asked someone, there was plenty of people wandering the hall, but he didn't mind this at all. It took a long time before he found the door. A large set of doors and various mechanical noise coming from inside. The door swung open several times from students going in or out. As he was about to step inside, the door blew open and slammed against the wall. Oops, a short girl that he recognized inspected if there were any damages. She inched away before his eyes widened when he was noticed. It was like that before, I swear, oh wait. I know you. It's me, Naruto replied. It was the girl with the cape and silver eyes. Ruby. What are you doing here? Came to take care of my weapon, he mentioned toward the sword in his hand, wrapped in the remains of his pants. He let that sink in. Pants. I see you still haven't gotten a scabbard for it either, Ruby gave an annoyed cute frown. Yeah, lost it. They were silent until she pulled out a large item strapped to her back. The mechanical parts extended before it transformed into a large scythe. I came to do the same thing, just finished actually. Meet Crescent Rose. She's my little sweetheart. It seemed weapons was something she was comfortable with. Naruto looked at Sasuke's blade in his hand. It was rather plain looking in comparison, a purple handle, wrapped in orange cloth. However, it didn't take away the monumental importance of it. It's an heirloom, I guess. What did Sasuke call it? Kusanagi. Ruby cooed, her eyes looked over the sword. Almost like she wanted to eat it. Can I hold it? Sure. She held it carefully, like it was a baby. Funny. Her eyes glazed, inspecting the details. She didn't hand her weapon to him. It was okay, he had no idea how it worked, he'd probably just hurt himself. It's so light, I wonder how durable it is. It's so classic. Even more so than John's. Doesn't even turn into anything at all, she gushed. It seemed she really loved weapons. He doubted if he said anything she would paid attention. Carefully, she handed back Sasuke's sword. What about your thing? What is it? My sweetheart. Well, Ruby transformed her weapon, the blade disappearing inside the various mechanisms within. She then gave a bunch of words and numbers that he couldn't comprehend. Firearms was still an entire new realm to him. Cool, he said when she finished. Her eyes lowered in suspicion. It's also a gun. I swear I said this before. It's a big gun then. Do you have any guns? She asked. This is the only thing I got. Naruto strapped the sword to his waist again, well, other than some of the tools he had in his tool bag. I have to get a scabbard for it too. I'll get that later. What? No guns. That's crazy, how can anyone live like that? She cried out. He chuckled. Is Yang still mad at me? Ruby grinned. Haha, yup. She took it her loss hard. You know that fire in her hair? She only gets that way when she's really angry. I'll be sure to remember that. Anyways, I'm going to clean this now. Oh, alright, later Naruto. Ruby ran off down the halls, disappearing in a burst of speed. The day felt better. The door clicked closed behind. A sigh escaped from her lips and she stood for a moment. Earlier events being cemented in her mind. Weiss took a breath as she strode forward. There was only one occupant inside. Blake. A novel in her hand as she leaned back against the headboard of her bed. It was a common sight. While Weiss enjoyed reading on occasion, it was nowhere near Blake's dedication. There was a heaviness in Weiss's mind. Cluttered and weighed down by all the thoughts of today. Another sigh fell from her. It was not something she did much or tried to do. As she had been told, uncouth. Sighing was a sign of immaturity or frustration. Weiss fell flat on her bed and breathed in the fresh smell of washed blankets. She laid there for a minute before she felt that she had to speak her mind. I felt like such a nightmare to Naruto today. What else is different, Blake muttered. There was a glint to her eye, no doubt a different word had sprung to her mind. Oh, ha ha, Weiss rolled her eyes. Sure, she was difficult to him because of his apparent disinterest in school. Did you know that Naruto can't read? Blake's eyes shot up from her boo. She blinked, the book fell from her grasp. Oh, that makes sense I guess. Right. Blake picked up her novel, but she didn't bother to open it. I wonder how he feels about you. Ugh, don't remind me. I wonder how that happened. Blake paused, some people aren't as fortunate, but it does make sense. It does? Weiss asked. She sat up, her hands resting on her lap. Some of us talk to him, have you tried? I talked to him today. About what? Blake said skeptically. And I don't mean talking about taking over his position. We discussed other things. Weiss paused, it was hard to swallow. The nicknames, for one. A smile formed on Blake's lips as she let out a laugh. Rice and pie. Weiss crossed her arms as she waited. She was annoyed, but Blake had nothing to do with it. You finished. You're lucky. I don't think he even remembered mine until recently. Lucky? He calls me Rice. Think about that. Rice. Anyways, I found out that he calls us those names because, in his own words, he had been hungry. Blake laughed again. Weiss was so glad that she was a source of humor for her partner. So, you said you wanted to talk to him about changing captains today, how did that go? Weiss frowned. Her appointment to team leader was bittersweet at best. Naruto had a good reason for his bad marks. He also had a prior discussion with Ozpin. Her argument had been made null, despite that, she was still made captain. At Naruto's discretion, no less. Was it that bad? No, it's just Weiss trailed off. She looked for the words that seemed to flutter away with each passing moment. She gazed at Naruto's bed, settled between hers and Blake's, his sheets were never fixed in the morning. She had been excited scratch that tremendously proud of the opportunity to be team leader. Whatever celebration she had in mind had been tempered. Naruto had given her the role on a silver platter. Ozpin appointed me captain, Weiss stated. Blake frowned, did he? I expected more jumping, hopping and other girly sounds. I do none of that. Blake continued, was he upset? Not in the slightest, he admitted he wasn't fit to lead and he even suggested to Ozpin that I be made captain. But not Purah. No. I wouldn't have minded if Purah was promoted. I would have preferred it. Blake replied. She picked up her book and started to read again. Weiss scowled at Blake but otherwise paid no other attention to her. She expected for Purah to made team leader, she was the closest to Naruto after all. She leaned back against the frame of her bed. She tried to relax, a deep breath or two. A knot tied itself in her stomach, twisted and seemingly impossible to untangle. I hope you won't take this lightly. Ozpin's words echoed and continued. Had she thought up of the edge to his voice when had said it? Or was it just her imagination? Weiss locked her hands together. It didn't matter, she was going to take this seriously. All that was needed was to prove herself. Had Naruto thought about this? Did anyone else who was a team leader did? How did one instance the team placement show who was fit for a role? Weiss decided that she needed to take this one step at a time. She imagined a firm grasp on Murdernister. Her head held tall, right foot forward, shoulders back. A goal, an objective that needed to be eliminated. She had to prove to her team that she was suitable to lead them. It seemed far off. Though, an opportunity presented itself in the form of the Vital Festival. After that, in second year when they could take missions. Was there something earlier than that? Her thoughts went to the only male in Team NPPW. Naruto had a problem that could hurt the team in the future if it wasn't settled. He had to learn how to read and write. Communication would be a vital aspect. That knot inside untied itself. How did he manage not being able to read? His parents or any caretaker must have neglected that part in life. All that annoyance she had felt about him since they started classes was misplaced. Ugh, he should have shared it, it would have been easy. She would have understood. That train of thought was interrupted when the door shut close. Her eyes opened, immediately placed at the intrusion of sound. The subject of her thoughts entered the room. There was no frown that she was used to seeing, but it was no smile either. "I feel like I could sleep already," he muttered. Naruto gave an obnoxious yawn as he crossed the room. He placed his weapon and pouch under the bed. He dived face first into his pillow. "Hold on," she said. "What?" "I woke up early today," Naruto replied, his words muffled. "I just wanted to talk to you about learning how to read." "Yeah, what about it?" He angled his head, enough that she didn't have to strain to try and understand him. "Next week, we're going to town, so we can get some texts or books to help you learn." "Are we?" "Yes, it's important that in the future that you know how to read when we actually work as a team," Weiss replied. He should understand how deep the possible issues might be. Naruto blinked several times before he shrugged. "Fine, I need to buy stuff too. Can you help me?" "If it's important." "Clothes I don't have," he replied. His eyes were shut closed as himself deeper in his blankets. "Now let me take a nap." "Wait. What else do you want?" She paused. "Just wanted to say sorry." An eye opened, blue focused on her. "Huh, for what?" She frowned and crossed her arms. Naruto yawned and he neglected to cover his mouth. She decided to ignore this for now. "For being so difficult to you since the first week of school." "Oh that, yeah, I don't care." He dug himself under the covers and he let out another yawn. "But ugh, what did he mean by that?" "You didn't know anyways." "Not your fault." It was like he saw right into her mind. "Then why didn't you say that?" Weiss asked. Naruto returned her question with a shrug. "You don't know or you're not telling me." He shrugged again and dug himself deeper in the mess of his blankets and sheets. "Let me take a nap. It was a nice day for once." A minute later he was snoring. Weiss felt better, sort of, at least he saw it from her point of view. He placed no blame on her. Weiss remembered what he said earlier today. Fiery, what did he mean by that? Did he mean passionate? He was not upset over her behavior. He had relinquished his position and gave it to her. It was ripe with possibilities to make her look bad, but he didn't try unless he was waiting. Or Naruto had accepted it, he wasn't qualified. "Are you paying attention?" Weiss asked. Her light blue eyes centered on him. There was no longer the annoyance. He didn't delve much as to why, but it was something, a feeling that he would always recognize. Weiss took his illiteracy as a serious issue. It was true, by her reasoning. His inability to read and write would be a problem when they started missions. Naruto hadn't even thought about that. Naruto answered her, "Yeah," he said, "semblances aren't really heredited here." "Hereditary?" "Yup, that one. Their semblances are usually different too," Naruto replied. Rice taken upon herself to make sure he paid attention in class. She turned her attention back to the professor, satisfied with his answer. Naruto noticed the students starting to pack up their notes or other things. The last class of today was about to end. It was a good thing that he never told Weiss he could speak and write another language. Otherwise he would have to write something down. He played with a pencil in his hands, weaved it through his fingers as he spun it around. Naruto was getting used to the prospect of going to school again. The similarities were present. Except, the people here had the decency to wait until they 21 to fight. Instead of almost a decade earlier. Instead of other shinobi, they fought beasts. At least twice per class, Weiss would ask if he was paid any attention. Sometimes he would answer because it was something he found interesting. Others, like something mathematical or random drabble that he wasn't sure that he would ever use in his life, he couldn't answer quite as well. Cue disappointment. Her brow would crease, disappointment would flash like he had personally insulted her. Matter of fact, it was the same when he called her Rice. She would underline her written words and continue to take notes. Presently, he watched her scratch her pencil on notes. The alien jumble of non-distinguishable words being written across the page. Even while everyone was putting their notes away, Weiss continued to write with fervor. Another minute passed before the professor called the class to a stop and said he would see them next week. Students filtered out of the class, he stepped in with his team. It was short day. One professor had called in sick for their next class. It was cancelled, so it was the weekend now. For the first time, there was something to look forward to. Buying clothes that wasn't just sleepwear or the uniform. They ended back at their room before long. When they did, Weiss spoke as they put away any notes or text they had. "There's a festival happening in town for the weekend, we should all go." "Why not?" Blake agreed. "I'd love to," Pura said. Weiss's posture relaxed and the cool smile she wore brightened. "Great. I guess this is a team outing." "Is it though?" Naruto asked. She made it sound so formal. "It is," he replied. Then he shrugged. Naruto found himself wondering what she liked, what she hated. Weiss hated the nickname, that was for certain. A contrast to Pai's opinion. Those thoughts also extended to Blake and Pi too. Blake for whatever reason did not want to reveal her heritage. He had nothing to say about that, but he did have his own thoughts. In his opinion, everyone on the team would find out sooner or later. As for Pura, the team mattered a lot to her. She had nothing bad to say about nearly everyone. There was an energy in the people she spoke to. Let's meet up at the Airbus at 3 when it arrives, I have to care for my weapon and some other things. Weiss said. Sure. Blake collected one of her books and left. Weiss picked her weapon, stored under her bed, an intricate designed rapier before she exited the room. Naruto dug under his bed for whatever belongings he had left. It was limited, his headband, kusanagi, and the lean that he had been given. Naruto sighed as picked up his headband, he laid it across his forehead, a familiar knot was planned, from countless times of tying it together. He attempted to tie it before the cloth ripped in his hands. Like all his decrepit clothes, it had fallen apart. The headband survived water, fire, and years of abuse. He ripped black cloth off the metal, the insignia was the most important part. Small scratches littered the surface. He placed it in his pocket, while he would never serve as a shinobi again, he could never leave without it. It meant too much. The bathroom door opened, it revealed Pura, freshly dressed in her bronze armor. A familiar warm smile appeared. Hey, did you want to get something to eat? Sure. Her green eyes reflected the simple joy, the importance of his acceptance. Ah, he was beginning to understand. One feature they had in common, despite the disparity in their appearances, eye color, because it was obvious that Sakura wasn't taller than him. Or is never mind. Pura collected her things, with one being a light brown jacket that she wore on top of her armor. They exited the room and walked the halls through the halls. There were still other unfortunate souls that had class, he regarded them with pity that only students can share. As well as the satisfaction of being more fortunate than them. So, what's an Airbus? He asked. The question caught her off guard. The laugh escaped from her lips, sometimes I forget that you're not from here. I blend in, he replied. If circumstances had been different, he would have reacted far from he had been to everything since arriving. For now, the only surprise he carried was that he was still standing. An Airbus is pretty much what it sounds like. An airship, it flies, she looked away, like it was strange to say, it will get us to the commercial district. They have a strict schedule. He imagined what it might look like. Long, narrow, shaped like a boat. A top deck, maybe wings. We had a couple things, but nothing like what you guys have here. No firearms though. No firearms. Yup, this were our firearms. He held up his arm, but he couldn't summon enough will to try and flex his arm, which was his intent. Despite that he couldn't commit, she laughed. He wondered if terrible jokes were up her alley, but I am being serious. Really? Pura leaned forward. Like semblances, just less restrictive, he replied. There was a brief flicker of an explosion that could wipe a country. Courtesy of Kagaya missing him. I can't do anything like that anymore. Like a moron, I hurt myself. Oh, she paused. How was it when you first heard a gun being fired? He noticed the pause. It seemed she tried to avoid talking about his home. Naruto wasn't entirely sure if he was too. He wasn't sure if he appreciated it or not. He wasn't certain of a lot of things, and he felt tired of that. You guys had sticks and they had booming sounds, so I called it boom sticks. She laughed and pulled out her weapon. It switched and flipped, turning into a long barrel. This one is my boomstick. I wasn't feeling creative. She gave a hum as they entered the cafeteria. Several students littered tables, but otherwise there was a lot of room. What are you having? She asked. Can you get me something with meat? He couldn't help but smile as shame overcame him. I notice you guys don't get a lot of meat. Oh, you can't. Pura looked around her and whispered the last word like it was forbidden to ever speak aloud. Read. You've been ordering food without knowing that. It's easy, I'll have what they're having workings really well. She ordered her food, as well as his. The lunch lady nodded. Then, until you learn. You can always ask me. They received their dishes and Naruto grabbed his plate. He felt his mouth water when he saw a large slab of mystery meat that he had no idea what might be. Whatever it was, he could appreciate how juicy it looked, the smell of spices entered his nose and his stomach growled. Oh man. He even felt a shiver crawl down his spine. They found a seat somewhere in the cafeteria. They continued to talk as they ate. He savored his meal, ate it as slow as possible to accomplish that. Two individuals arrived, both girls wearing the school uniform. One of them had a pair of brown rabbit ears with her brown hair. While the other girl was taller than him. That seemed to happen often. The girl with the rabbit features sparked a fragment of familiarity inside him before he recalled that this was the girl being bullied some unknown time ago, had it been 2 weeks. Her eyes looked away when he was noticed and she made herself smaller. There was another girl that stood alongside who might as well the opposite of her. One hand on hip with her posture straight and demanding, dark tinted glasses hid her eyes. Her hand went behind the Frontis girl's back before she was pushed forward. A gasp escaped from the Frontis girl. Hi, the girl said. Her voice was quiet, an accent to her speech. I'm Velvet. That familiarity grew, and Naruto immediately felt a smile form on his lips. Naruto. Coco, the other girl said. Coco gave a wave, and her words were crystal clear in comparison to the other. Took a long while for Velvet to find you. Nice to meet you both, I'm Purah. Pai said. They finished the introductions. I wanted to say thank you, Velvet said. A pause, for what you did. It was nothing. You didn't get hurt, did you? Not at all. He replied. I wouldn't think twice about it if I got hurt for trying to help someone. Velvet's cheeks flushed. He had simply said something he'd believed in. Right now, his mind was blank. He couldn't figure out what to say. This girl's personality reminded him of Hinata, however brief it was. It was nice to meet you. He said. We'll be seeing ya. Coco said, as Velvet waved them off. We should be going, it's almost time for the buses to arrive. They took a route outside, and on several platforms were this odd-shaped buses with students piling inside. There was a lot of chatter and a lot of tall people. This is the quickest way to Vale. Purah placed a hand on his shoulder before she stepped forward in line to the airbus. Do you see Weiss and Blake anywhere? I don't know, you're the taller one. Nonetheless, he attempted to scout them out. He saw students loading into the airbus. Excited chatter, laughs and giggles. Purah laughed, I see them, over there at the third one. Naruto spotted them, as Rice was easy to spot in a crowd. They spilled through the crowd that thinned with every moment as everyone pooled into the airbuses. They were spotted by the duo when they approached. There you are, Weiss said. I thought you two were going to be late. Let's go. Blake muttered, she followed behind the group as they stepped inside the airbus. It was crowded inside, most of the seats were taken so they were forced to stand. There were windows on either sides that gave a view outside. A green light appeared beside the door and the hatch locked them inside. Are you guys excited for the Vital Festival this year? Weiss said. I'm not too interested in that. Blake said. Of course. Purah said. It's going to be fun. Oh, I can't wait until next semester. He paid mild attention to it as they lifted off the ground and sped through the air. Purah and Weiss continued to talk about their excitement. He paid little attention to it, he was busy looking outside. The view changed repeatedly. So, this festival? He asked Blake. A flash of understanding in her amber eyes. Happens every 2 years, I'm guessing both want to fight in the tournament. Blake mentioned to them. Schools from each kingdom fight, I've seen it a few times. Oh, I did something like that once. Naruto replied. You're not interested? I don't need to be a part of games. Blake said. It told him a little about how she was. They continued to speak to one another for a little while before the conversation died. Time continued to pass, but he didn't pay attention to how much. He looked at the down below at the city. Purah had said that this was the commercial district of Vale. Some buildings were tall, standing over a dozen stories tall, other wide and far-reaching. He saw some other airships in the distance, flying over the glow of the city. The architecture was different from the Hidden Leaf. We might as well make a plan, Weiss said. If we're going to make it on time to catch the festival we'll need to split up. Naruto needs some help buying clothes, but I also need to grab some books to help him learn. I'll pass on helping Naruto shop for clothes, but I'll definitely go to the library, Blake replied. Well, books are useless to me right now, Naruto. I can't do anything by myself, since reading issues. I'd be glad to help you. Purah said. She gave a smile. That settles it then, Weiss and I will go find a few books for Naruto. Well, you both shop for Naruto's clothes. Blake said. Partners with partners, he muttered, alright, hi, if you get lost we're screwed. Their hands traced spines of the books. Some had a different texture, but the general smell of a library was pungent. Unlike the school's smell of dust, this one was fresh. Weiss picked out a textbook that she had been searching for, she was annoyed at how long it took. Her fingers flicked through the pages and she skimmed through the text. She wasn't a teacher, but she tried to envision on how Naruto might be able to learn. Naruto could speak okay, if not rough and unrefined. It shouldn't be a huge task for him to learn. Learning how to read and write was something that she scarcely remembered. She slammed the book close, all that time for something that held the same material she held in her hands. Weiss wasn't certain if Purah and Blake were willing to help. She could ask, or do it herself, or even hire a tutor. What seemed a quality that belonged to a leader. Her musings were interrupted when she noticed Blake approach. Her arms cluttered with novels and texts. I assume that's not all for Naruto? Weiss asked. Several for myself, a couple for our former captain, she replied. Her amber eyes gazed at the small bundle Weiss carried. One now, since I grabbed the same copy. She placed it on a table. Weiss held 3, and one more would be added. Think this is good enough? Weiss asked. She had several textbooks, each on differing grade levels. She also found a little workbook that would help. Blake said, looks like you're serious about this. I am, she huffed. What was with her disparaging remarks? What do you have against me anyway? Other than being a schnee? She snorted. That's easy, you're the captain. What does me being captain change anything? Because, to me, you're the worst choice. Weiss frowned, we haven't done anything that would prove that I'm incapable. We hardly done anything for Naruto to prove incapable. There's more to a captain than just being good at school, she spat. You're probably the worst choice of us all. She was stunned at this declaration, excuse me? You're suggesting that Naruto would be the better choice as the captain? He also made the decision. Blake snorted, her head shaking as she looked away. Oh Weiss, leaders can be wrong too. At least I trust him. You trust him? Weiss asked, disbelieving. In this short a time? She didn't hesitate, yes. How was that possible? Naruto barely interacted with anyone. What could he have possibly done to earn her trust? Blake was her partner, not his. If you're bothered by it Blake, then why didn't you say so before the change in leadership? Because I expected Purah. It was Naruto that suggested it and it was Ozpin. Blake interrupted, tell me what you've done, all your pettiness and complaints, a bitch who throws a tantrum when she doesn't get her way. Whatever words that Weiss had on her mind was wiped. Blake threw her books on a table and walked away. Weiss didn't realize how tight her fists were wound up. Her knuckles white and sore. She took a deep breath to calm herself. It accomplished little with how her blood boiled. She recounted her steps, one step back, a firm grip, but not too tightly. Back straight and all those other things. It didn't help. She picked up the book intended for Naruto, it didn't matter what be in them. She stomped her way through the library. Her disposition apparent to others as they kept clear. If she didn't have her trust, then she would gain it. She wouldn't bend, not like Naruto had done. She pulled out her scroll. The touchscreen hammered by her fingers as they texted Purah. Weiss bought the books and hopped on the nearest bus towards where Naruto and Purah was. Her time on the bus allowed her to cool down. Blake didn't trust her. Despite the length of time since school started. They got nowhere. This would be harder than she thought. The others didn't trust her, they didn't believe in her, what could be done? Her thoughts came to an end when her stop came. She stepped off and was greeted by the sight of the remaining members of her team, Naruto and Purah. They had been waiting for her. There was a smile on Naruto's lips and Purah laughed at whatever he had said. It seemed that he was smiling more often instead of the perpetual frown he carried. Judging on their mood, they had a better time than she did. Blake wasn't the most talkative person. Filled with curt replies or silence. Weiss was noticed. Hello Weiss. Hey, where's Blake? Naruto said. He looked different, comfortable, even. An unzipped black jacket and pants, the only color being an orange shirt. He had a proper scabbard holstered on his back instead of the horrid cloth. She pressed her lips together at the reminder, she went off on her own, she changed the subject, it seems you've gotten proper clothing. He nodded, the rest are being brought to the school. There was shine that got her attention, a metal band on the holster hidden underneath his jacket. A symbol that resembled a leaf. What's that plate anyway? I noticed you carrying it around. A trinket of mine, he replied. He fingered the plate. The festival grounds were interesting. Settled on several blocks of streets, vendors and decorations littered the sidewalks and poles and everything that a road possessed. There was even a stage on a plaza or park that he had seen. Then there was the food, and lots of it. People too, it was crowded. Blake had rejoined them, but only after an hour at being at the grounds. Blake had looked at Weiss with disapproval. Otherwise, nothing else was said between them. Whatever it was, it couldn't be too bad, they can settle it on their own. For now, let him enjoy the abundance of different food. Sugary stuff, sweet food, meats and fried food. So many that he couldn't name them all. Despite all that, there was no ramen to be found anywhere. What kind of place didn't have that? It wasn't a real festival until there was ramen. I'll be back, I'm going to check out that way. Purah nodded, her attention focused on a vendor game in which she competed against Weiss. A fake gun settled in her hand as small pellets fired out of it. Targets going down quickly, the other competitors stood little chance against them both. Naruto passed by the numerous people, the children, the elderly. Smiling, or laughing. He was sure that they hadn't explored this section of festival. He was on a mission to find the elusive food vendor that sold ramen. He felt his mouth water at the brief thought of those noodles going into his stomach. He could envision it, clear as day. The glimmering broth, the taste of the noodles in his mouth, how filling okay, time to stop thinking about it and find it so that he could experience it. Naruto continued to search for it. He might as well have the Byakugan because his eyes missed nothing. Despite how little that happened today, it was a good day. Once he found the ramen, it would be a great day. Perhaps his teammates would enjoy a bowl with him. Yeah, that would be the stuff. Naruto spotted someone above on one of the rooftops. No one else was on the roofs, it was hard to not notice him. He wore a porcelain mask, much like the Anbu wore back home. This one had crimson painted red eyes, with a small single horn protruding from the forehead. The person noticed him, his arms crossed. They stared at one another for a moment and the person gave a small wave. He walked away. Weird. Naruto heard the explosion then. Perhaps, more accurately, experienced it. The harsh blinding light. Its terrible heat and the weightlessness. His ears rung and his body numb. He wasn't here anymore. But somewhere else, abyssal and consuming. The voice that was no longer there shouted at him to get up. Any slight movement made his head pulse with pain. His skin felt like bugs feasted on it. He felt his heart racing, stampeding through every part of his body. It was like time stopped and moved faster simultaneously. In the darkness, he had found his teacher crumpled and broken. It had felt forever, but it wasn't long. You're the one who keeps his word. He lunged for breath. With an instinct that never died, his body moved. His hands found the ground and the direction of the world settled. Pure agony shot through his right hand, he glanced at it, a large shard of glass through his palm. Naruto ignored it in favor of his surroundings. A stampede of screams. A tempest of dust filled the entire plaza. He glanced in every direction, rocks, wood and other debris littered the sidewalk. Several people walked on about in a daze, disorientated. Several froze, petrified from the panic. Others ran in horror, pushing others. Others laid motionless on the ground. Another explosion erupted down the street. Naruto seen the fire in the air. More deafening screams. His uninjured hand went to his scroll. The others had green across the board, except for his. He pulled Kusanagi from its scabbard. His gaze searched the wreckages, the broken-in window of a building, looking for any source of danger. He noticed a man hiding under a turnover cart. A wailing child clutched in his grasps as he looked about in a panic. There was a person beside Naruto, trapped under a cart as she tried to escape. He was about to help until he noticed someone with a weapon on their hands. He stood frozen regarding him with hesitant and eyes filled with anxiety. Naruto held onto his own weapon, this person might have something to do with it or he might be someone just like him. There was a silent stare down. Before realization set it that they were both harmless. He was a huntsman and had no mask, it was enough to trust him. He took a careful breath before Naruto helped the woman trapped under a cart by lifting it, she freed herself, hugged her knees and cried. Other people needed his help, but first he needed to get this glass shard out of his hand. One end of the glass was stained red from his blood. Drips of crimson edged from his wound. His hand pulsed pain repeatedly. It was like ripping out a band-aid. Except, it didn't feel like that at all. He ignored it in favor of helping other people strewn about. There he is, I found him. Naruto heard the familiar sound of Purah's voice behind him. Thank goodness. Purah ran to him, her weapon extended and poised in her hands. Weiss and Blake quickly joined her, their gazes sweeping over the surroundings. Their own weapons in their hands as they crossed the street to where he was. Looks of concern etched on their faces. Weiss gazed at him. Blue met blue. Her lips pursed and her voice quiet. You need to sync your aura to the scroll. He was silent and he couldn't figure out on how to reply to that. He focused on a more pressing matter. I'm fine, let's see if anyone here needs help. Naruto felt the cracks of glass beneath his feet, various debris of paper or other materials fell from the sky. So much like ash. All he heard was the screams. These memories were etched into his mind, every image permanently ingrained. So, it was preferable to be here, to have something to do. Naruto stared at this ceiling with the prickly drips that he had begun to hate looking at. Though, judging by the toss of blankets, the quiet sighs and fumbling sheets, he wasn't the only one who had trouble trying to sleep. Their screams and sight of bodies through the dust. Someone moved in the dark to his right, Weiss. Okay, is anyone else actually asleep? Weiss said. Everyone murmured their affirmations. Blankets being tossed aside and more ruffling. A lamp powered on and lit the room. Everyone was seated on their bed and he followed the example and sat against the headboard. I thought it was just me, someone added. It was a long uncomfortable lull. Who would do such? Purah paused and she let out a restrained breath, such a terrible thing. Blake was the one to respond, I don't even know what if any reason they might have. Someone who enjoyed killing. To hurt. That was just one reason, whether it was true was to be seen. The White Fang might have something to do with it, Weiss muttered. We don't know who they are, Blake looked particularly peeved with Rice for whatever reason. Otherwise she said nothing else. She had told him of the White Fang. People frustrated of the division of Faunus. It's likely, Purah muttered quietly. There was nothing said and the silence was left unfilled as the others did their own thing. Weiss fiddled with her scroll, Purr glanced at him several times with nervous energy, and Blake tried and failed to read whatever book she had. "There's something I forgot to do," Weiss said. "Naruto, hand me your scroll, would you?" Naruto reached under his bed to fetch the device before he handed it to her. She came to his bed and sat beside him. Naruto looked curiously at the screen as she tapped it with precision and ease. "I'm sensing your aura in case you forgot," she replied. The only sound was Weiss's taps. Naruto knew it was impossible, Glinda had tried it. She was also the one who controlled the bar whenever he fought during the spars. The bed compressed once more as someone else sat beside him, a soft hand on his shoulder. The girl with green eyes. "You know, you scared us," Purr said. A frown was settled on her lips. Weiss shot a glance and gave a nod. "That happened where you were headed, so we all thought that." It was left unsaid, but it was obvious. I spoke, he barely heard it. "You won't get used to it." This weight he felt lightened. "Sorry." "Ugh, this refuses to work," Rai said. She held his scroll next to him before another deep frown settled. "Did something happen to it when you were caught in the blast?" "Well, I flew through the air and crashed," Naruto replied. Weiss gave him back the scroll. "It might be broken, so we'll have to get a replacement." He sighed, he expected something like this would happen, he just wasn't looking forward to it. "It'll never work." "Excuse me?" Blake interrupted, she seated across from them on Rice's bed. "I found the story about the attack. It's not the White Fang at all." "Really?" she said, her brow raised. "Can you send it to me?" Purr didn't move, in fact, she stared intensely at him and he looked right back. Her face flashed with sudden clarity, like a seemingly difficult problem had been solved and with a much too obvious solution, and you could only question your own intelligence. It was something that he knew with such intimacy. Her mouth formed into a solid "Oh, you don't have an aura." "Yeah," he confirmed. Naruto glanced at Weiss, but her attention was focused on a video that she had begun to play. It was avoided for now. "But we fought," she trailed off. "We did," he looked to the others, "what's it say?" Purr pressed on, a concerned expression aimed at him. "You could have gotten hurt." "But I didn't, so forget about it," he said sharply. Pai parted her lips to speak, but she said nothing and dropped the subject at his request. "I'd like to know too." "Okay," Weiss replied. "There's a video too. Let me play it." He joined them, standing by the edge to peer at the screen. There was a woman on the screen. Nearly 100 people were reportedly injured, 20 people have been killed in the attack. We'll update that number when more information comes in. A group have claimed responsibility for the attack, they call themselves Artem. That group? Weiss frowned. Again. Artem? You don't know. Have you been living under a rock? I might as well be, he replied. She sighed, sorry, just another crazy group that sprung up recently. No one really knows what they want, they steal stuff and committed a few murders. Naruto, you saw a person, haven't you? What did they look like? Purr asked. It was the reason why they returned so late, he had to go see the authorities about the fact he saw a suspicious person. He had been a witness, Ozpin had shown up during that time, and in his words, as a precaution for his situation. I don't know, they wore a mask. What kind of mask? Blake asked. The white porcelain one. There's not much to describe other than that. The mask had red eyes and single horn protruding from the forehead. Did he have a long sword on his back? Everyone looked at her, Naruto frowned and shrugged, I didn't see any. Wait a second, Weiss interrupted. How would you know that? Blake shrunk back, her bow twitched, and she frowned. I may have seen someone like that. You know this person? Weiss said, her voice raised in an almost accusing manner. No, I don't. I just briefly encountered him. It might not even be him, just a coincidence perhaps. Perhaps not, however little it may be, it might help. We should go report this to the investigators. I can't, Blake stood from the bed and edged toward her own. There was a deep furrow in Rice's brow. What do you mean you can't? You have to tell the detectives because anything that can help will get these killers behind bars, she was shouting now, standing with her fist clenched. I just can't, okay? Blake, this doesn't make any sense, why not? Weiss commanded. Blake was silent. Are you telling me that you're fine with these people being free, what if they attack again? No, I'm not fine with it. Blake shouted back. And I'm not telling you of all people. Naruto shared a look with Purr and continued to watch. What does that have to do with anything, if not then go to the police? It's because I can't. Why not? It was when I was a part of the White Fang, that's why. Blake shouted. Then a look of shock appeared on her face. Judging by everyone's expression, they were surprised by this declaration. He was in the loop this time, so that was a plus. This silence felt like it was about to shatter in a million pieces. Do our neighbors hear us? Naruto asked. You can't be kidding me. Weiss shouted, her furious blue centered on him. before she pointed an accusing finger at Blake. And you're a connoisseur. Blake suddenly shot from her position and shot toward. Naruto intercepted and grasped her wrist and stopped. After today, not a great idea. She was silent, her amber eyes digging into his. I don't know what I wanted to do. You might as well get it out of the way. Unless you never want to come back. Weiss froze into the spot, glared at his direction, those eyes looked so much like ice this time. You knew about this? Not at all, but I don't care about much at all, really. He noticed a surprised glance from Blake. Weiss shrunk back. Paris stood from the bed and approached Weiss to place a hand on her shoulder. Let's hear what Blake has to say before we do anything. Bry said nothing, but her gaze would shatter if it could. She was shaking. Blake took it as an invitation to speak. I'm a former member of the White Fang. If I go to the investigators, then I'll be put into prison. There's a reason why I quit. Do you know how many people they killed? How much pain they caused? It's just. I know full well Weiss. What of the Schnee Company? You think they're innocent too? They have blood on their hands. He was out of the loop again. Naruto witnessed the hate in their eyes. Words that felt ages ago echoed in his mind. I need a place to think. Weiss turned around and he watched the door slam close. There was brief period of silence before Paris sighed. I'll go talk to her, Paris said. Everyone was still dressed in their sleeping wear and he watched her follow Weiss. He was alone in the room with Blake. Blake, shaken, collapsed to the bed. Fondness was still a weird word to him to signify a person. It didn't make much sense to him. You know, it sounded like you two were mortal enemies for a moment. I don't hate her that much. There was a long silence, her chin rested on her hand. I just hate what she represents, what her family has done. I'll give you that, Rice can be a bit much. What a stupid nickname, and at a time like this. She let out a dry laugh and shook her head. He shrugged, I don't know what the White Fang has done to her, but it sounds like she thinks the same way. Can you blame her? No, we're doing the same to each other. He couldn't blame them. Hatred just made everything blurry, it left no room for rational thought. To release all that just felt good. You know, I think you made a mistake in letting Weiss be captain. It should have been you or Purr. He shrugged, he was curious about Weiss. There was also a fact that being a leader wasn't an important thing. She wanted to be, so I let her. As for Purr, I don't really know. 4 in the morning and none of us can sleep. Blake muttered, she stood up and gazed out a window. I should leave, shouldn't I? Do you want to? He asked. She took off the bow in her hair and traced its edges. I don't know. Then don't go. She let out a breath, you don't get it. Right now, Weiss can be calling huntsmen to come and arrest me. I don't think so. Why do you think that? Just a feeling. There's nothing logical about that, he could only reply with something redundant, so he shrugged. Blake sat back down and buried her face into her hands. Why don't you care? I've told you what the White Fang had done. You're here now, you're not a part of them. That's good enough for me, Naruto hummed. What did Blake want to accomplish? Naruto could have pictured his ghostly ambition with clarity. Seated in the Hokage's seat, a stack of papers on the table. He would swivel on his comfortable chair, place the hat on the table, and turn around to face the window and watch as the village moved. He would protect it until his last breath. Like a leaf on wind, he watched it soar and fade. Naruto could not use his power any longer. At least, he had protected it one last time. He had to believe that the old sage came up with solution to save his friends. You're from another dimension alright, she muttered. I wasn't pleasant to Weiss, we are nothing like you and Purr. There were words that Naruto wanted to say, but it was better it was left unsaid for now. He couldn't take another. I kinda guessed yesterday. She sighed. Weiss has every reason to not call them on me. Do you trust me, Blake? I trusted you with my secret, she hugged herself. Her eyes drawn to the door. The White Fang used to be important to me. I believed very much in what they used to be about. Suddenly, without me realizing, it all changed. It's why I'm here. To do what? Does it matter? She replied. It's over. What was over? He remembered saying that a moment of doubt was the moment it was over. Now, all he could think was that doubts meant it was still alive. If he could go home. What then? What's the one that makes it not over? I'd choose that one, no matter how unlikely, he replied. Call it hope, even it was mangled, withered, and left in the closet to rot. He had a good feeling about it. Blake was silent for a long time. Then she sighed, then we'll see, can I ask something, why Weiss? She asked for it, she wanted it, and she didn't lie about it, he replied. Words lingered on the edge of his lips, but he wasn't sure if he could say it. I wonder what drives her. She'll be a better captain. I can't say I believe the same. Oh. I didn't give her a chance, she paused. I suppose my hatred got in the way. Happens, Naruto replied. So what about this group? What are you going to do about them? Blake shook her head. I'm not sure you realize that it's damned if I do, damned if I don't. He shrugged, he hadn't seen it if he had to be honest. Well, might as well choose the best. Weiss felt the overbearing heat. She wrung her hands together, tight and stiff. Her name was called behind her, but she didn't wait. She needed to fill her lungs with the cool air. She strode down the halls, intent on finding the nearest door outside. When she found it, the door slammed open, crashing against the wall. She inhaled the cool air that cooled the fire she felt throughout. The sky was a dark purple, and the shades grew lighter in the direction of the sunrise. Another hour or so, which would mean they had stayed up the entire night. The door opened once more, it was Purr. That was good, she didn't want to see Blake. Purr didn't say anything, a fact that Weiss was thankful for, as she was still processing the new information. What do you think, Purr? She asked. Naruto had already shared his thoughts, with him in mind, she didn't want to see him either. To be truthful, I don't know, she paused. This is another big thing I've recently found out, but compared to that, I would suppose this is more down to earth. And what would that be? Purr frowned, it's rather private. Weiss snorted, like someone on your team being a member of the White Fang. Purr gave a smile, a rather apologetic one, in her defense, it's not something that you would tell everyone. If it involves innocent people dying and her reluctance to approaching the PY side. Sorry, I didn't mean to yell. It's fine, Purr looked exhausted, and Weiss figured she looked the same way. The wind blew, and Weiss felt goosebumps. A shiver coursed through her. I'm sure she had her reasons, Purr said. Weiss gazed after her, Purr was always so calm and collected, she could stare death in the eye and she wouldn't budge. The dust-filled streets, the chaos, the cries. The bodies strewn about on the ground. They had tried to help, only to realize that they had already passed on. It had been difficult between Weiss and Blake. Nonetheless, she was relatively normal. After all, they had shared a room since the start of the semester. If she wanted Weiss dead, it would have happened long ago. This entire tragedy could not be ignored. Something had to be done. What would a captain do? She put forward all her thoughts into how to bring them justice. Purr was silent throughout until the moment Weiss knew what to do. We need to have a talk, all of us. Weiss walked back inside, Purr trailing behind her. The halls were dark with the occasional dim light. What are going to do, Weiss? Something needs to be done about that group, do you agree? Of course, but what about Blake? What will happen next will depend on her. Weiss stopped in the hall and she looked at her. I want to know if you'll have my back. Whatever happens in there. Purr frowned and after a brief thought, she nodded. Yes. I hope you'll make the right decision. Weiss felt relief flood through her, I think you should be more worried about Blake's. They continued toward their room. Every step brought a gloom that descended upon her, a rock settled in her gut. She really hoped Blake made the right choice. No, she would make the right choice, it would be fine. Words came and went to form what she wanted to say. The door unlocked to her team's room, Naruto gazed back curiously. Still seated on her bed, Blake was seated across, and she noticed the ears atop of her head, she averted her eyes. There's something we all need to discuss, Weiss declared, she went between them both and placed her hands on her hips. Lay it on us, Naruto muttered. Despite what earlier information they had found out. Weiss didn't understand how he could be relaxed. She focused on Blake, this hinged on her alone. Even if she knew the likely answer, her hands shook and she pressed down harder on her hips to hide that fact. She hated doubts. Right now, it doesn't matter if you're a faunus or even once a part of the White Fang. I think we can both agree is that what we both believe isn't important. Blake, whoever they were, they murdered innocent people that we all saw lying in the streets. Something needs to be done. What do you have planned? Blake asked. Weiss frowned. I can only answer that when I know what you are willing to do. Blake glanced at Naruto before she looked to Weiss. I know it's selfish of me that I don't want to approach the authorities, but I definitely want to stop these people, whoever they are. Weiss resisted the urge to let loose the breath she had been holding. The sudden clap made her jump, Naruto had a grin on his face and his hands clasped together. Now we can all relax. So, Weiss, what you got for us? Weiss shook her head, really? He shrugged. She decided to ignore him. Then, for now, let's see what you know. There has to be more to this story, correct? Blake crossed her arms and stared directly back. Yes. Weiss sat on her bed, let's start on how you know this person. Everyone looked exhausted, but sleep was far from her mind. I don't know much, but I'll tell everything I know. This was a while ago, I don't know the man's name, but he approached the White Fang to see if they were willing to work together. We refused, we didn't know what he wanted, but we weren't interested. Is there anything else, something that we can use? Weiss asked. He gave us a way to contact him, in case we changed our minds. I still have it. That's big. Purr muttered. We can work with that, right? If she didn't change it, Weiss replied. She crossed her arms. She wasn't certain what to think of Blake. However, a few things could be done. "I'd rather avoid the authorities," Blake said. "We can deal with them by ourselves." Weiss would have preferred if she made that decision. Is everyone fine with that? "We are huntresses," Pura said. And one huntsman. "We might still be in training, but we're still capable. We don't need a license to do right," Naruto added. "Then we contact him and we'll meet with this group," Weiss replied, feeling more certain. If Blake was up to anything, then she would only be digging herself deeper. Blake was the first to break the silence. "Both you and Pura are fairly renowned, whoever they are bound to recognize someone from the Schnee company. The invincible girl speaks for itself." And Naruto said they had noticed each other too, Pura said. "That also leaves him out." "It seems everything hinges on you, Blake," Weiss said. "If there's too many people involved we might get noticed." She would have preferred help, but it didn't seem to be the case. But even then, who would they ask? "That's fine," she replied. It seemed there was a lot to think about. She started to feel the exhaustion of today's events catching up to her. A small glimmer of gold light filtered through the curtain. It told the passage of time. She supposed it could wait. "They're going to be in hiding, so we have time to plan out the details and change everything." Poor notification sounded in the room. She looked for her scroll hidden somewhere in the mess of her blanket. "You didn't take Blake cut herself off?" "Pardon me?" Weiss asked. Blake averted her eyes. "Never mind." Weiss pulled her attention to her scroll. "It seems classes have been cancelled for the week." Well, it didn't say much. The reason was obvious. Weiss yawned, but she doubted she could sleep. Plenty weighed on her mind. What possible plan, what day, how it might be done, the preparation, her team Blake. The intensity of those thoughts rose when the plan was enacted. It was a solid plan, that she knew. Weiss wasn't worried about it. Naruto and Pura were both skilled fighters. Blake had proved herself too, as whether she could be trusted was another matter. There was an unknown factor to many things. They had to be ready to move, whether it be a couple of hours or in days. "Ready?" Weiss asked. Blake nodded. A silence descended and everyone bore a serious expression. "Started." They sat in their room as the scroll rung the tone. No word would be said and the quiet was monumental, palpable. It would be terrible for the mission to end before it could begin. They were doing this at Blake's suggestion. The ringing stopped and with the scroll pressed to her ear, Blake gave a nod. "We heard about Sunday." Inaudible words were heard. "Yes, we're interested." More words. "Anytime." "That will work. I should be recognized with who was there." "Okay." Blake held the scroll in her eyes and she breathed out. Nothing was said. "That was short," Naruto muttered. It broke whatever spell had come over them. "Think they bought it?" Pura asked. "I do," Blake replied. "When are we supposed to meet them?" Weiss said. "Tomorrow, at 4. Somewhere in the residential district in public before we switch to somewhere more private. We're supposed to agree on them both." "That's an outcome we were hoping for." She clasped her hands together and rested her chin. "So, should we do our preparations?" Weiss looked at the time. "Today then, we should find any locations that we can use. There's an air bus that comes in a couple of hours, that's when we should go." Each of them agreed to the idea. Blake said she needed to go clean her weapon and Pura went along with her, as was agreed between them. It left her alone with Naruto. Blake had trusted in him, or it was something she said to shake her confidence. Naruto was on a strange fence. His gear was strewn about his bed. She noticed no dust or any firearm. Weiss checked her own gear and made sure that her dust was accounted for and if Mightynister was in proper condition. It was quickly done and she double-checked and then triple-checked. Weiss sat back on her bed, her fingers drummed rhythmically on the bed. Naruto had collected his gear and was laying on his bed staring at the ceiling, another thing he did. There was something different and she could feel his anticipation. She realized that she had completely forgotten about his aura and of his claim. "I can't believe I forgot. What did you mean by it will never work?" "My aura?" Naruto asked. She nodded and sat up from his bed and frowned. It's complicated." "Complicated? How?" "This is important, we need to know the status of your aura when we fight. We need to make sure what happened at the festival won't repeat." His lips pursed. Why was he so hesitant on this matter? Naruto looked away. "It will never work because I don't have any aura. I never have and I never will." She was surprised by his declaration and looked at him for any sort of reaction. "Nothing." "What? Like, some kind of grim?" "Sure, I'm a beast." "That's not what it just doesn't make any sense. Everyone has aura, you shouldn't be the exception." "Oh, I'm a very special snowflake, Rice." "Like any other snowflake?" "Yep." Weiss rolled her eyes. "Explain the aura bar when you spar." "The prof." "Wait," she interrupted. "If what you're saying is true, you've been fighting without aura protection." He crossed his arms and frowned. "I've been fighting a lot longer than that." All without. Yes. Does Ozpin know? Of course, Blake and Pi know too. There's something you're not telling me, he seemed especially taken back by her words. Was this what the others had referred to earlier? He frowned and crossed his arms. He took a breath and released, giving her the impression of reluctance before he finally spoke. If you want to know why, it's because I'm from another dimension. Silence. More silence. One blink and another. What was with these sudden confessions? Excuse me. What's coming up is why I avoided it. Do you think I'm that gullible? She retorted. No, any other words that might have come out was interrupted by him. Look, our team believes me, even Ozpin. So it's no big deal. Weiss wasn't certain how to take this outlandish claim. This, coupled with their upcoming self-assigned mission, was a bit to take in. She thought her first year, much less the first semester, would be uniform. She would showcase her potential and all the rest would fall into place. She rubbed her temples, unbelievable. There was no time to change course, no time to explain. To change the plan would ruin everything. Naruto was still one of the better fighters in their year, that didn't change. Ugh, this doesn't matter right now. You took the words right out of my mouth, he smiled. His eyes reflected the steel behind them. And yeah, I am still coming. He should have shared this a long time ago. Silence. The day already seemed forever and it was going to be longer still. Coupled with the secrets her team had, it was a lot to take in. Even then, there was still one more thing that hung in the back of her mind. It had been there since her promotion. She had no one to talk to about these thoughts and there was little time to find someone. She wondered if Naruto had similar feelings as he was the previous captain. I know you weren't captain for long, but I was wondering if you had ever thought about how you might be responsible for everyone's lives. It was also because she might be leading them to their deaths in an actual mission. He scratched his chin. Not really, but I wouldn't overthink it. It was her role to think about this, the safety of her team was in her hands. It was suffocating. Now, it was settling in. We're not here to live a safe life. We all know it's going to be dangerous. I trust you to keep us as safe as possible whatever gets thrown our way. His words were comforting, but also surprising. She hoped to make the right decisions. Of course. Tomorrow would tell it all. They passed the various halls. It wasn't busy by any means, as it was the weekend. Several more days and it would resume. The path between the dormitories and the cafeteria had plenty of traffic. She stopped by one, specifically that had been decorated. She entered a circular hall and her eyes caught the memorials that had been set up in the corner. I heard about them, Naruto muttered. He said nothing else. There was no else here, many people had already paid their respects. For the two that had been, she stood in front, her eyes centered on the portrait of the person. Letters were littered around it, cards and trinkets. Weiss didn't know this person, a brown-haired older boy who was in the third year. The other, a blonde girl in second year. She had been messaged by Team RRYN to see if they were okay on the day of the attack, she supposed they were acquaintances. Even John had tried to reach her, everyone that she knew was fine. She came here to pay her respects, she didn't have anything to offer, no memory of him, except a promise. Weiss finished and noticed him staring intensely at the portraits. Let's go, in case the bus arrives early, she said. I don't need to repeat the plan, correct? Weiss asked. At the least, she hoped Naruto was attentive in this matter, if not in his schooling. She was pleased to hear that everyone didn't need to. Naruto was the first to step off the airbus, he blinked at the droplets that met the city. What kind of place do we want? Weiss frowned at the weather. A rumble in the skies, an ugly bruised color. She didn't know it was going to rain, she had no umbrella. She led the way to their bus stop. It depends, places to hide or to sneak in. Blake said. There weren't many people around, no one at their stop, but other routes that led deeper had more. Whatever you think might be appropriate, let us try to minimize escape routes as well, she replied. Blake stared, they might be doing the same as us. Which mean they would recognize you and Naruto. Blake pulled the hood of her raincoat over her features. Solved, the rain would only help. Naruto was busy staring at his surroundings. It's a good thing that the weather is with us, Pura said. A bus pulled up that they all got on. It was quiet on the bus, only two other people that sat in front. She tried not to stare at the other two in the bus. They could potentially be the one who had seen Naruto and Blake. They weren't looking at them when they passed them. They sat at the end. So, Naruto said. All of you know my secret now. I never really considered it one. Weiss stared at her scroll, her teammates were green, except for the one blank bar of aura. It made sense that he had possessed none, being from a different place. She still didn't quite know what to think of it yet, either way, she still had to keep it in mind. For some reason, it never occurred to me that you wouldn't be like us, Pura said. Who was the first to find out? I told Pi, then Blake. Don't tell anyone, alright? So, she had been the last, what did that say? The same could be said for my secret, Blake said. Everyone acknowledged it, though keeping it was another matter. Weiss started to speak in a hushed tone, let us avoid any open and populated areas. Anything else? She nodded, let's split up, that way we can scout out areas faster, Purr, you're with Blake. Naruto, you're with me. We'll continue with the plan. They nodded their affirmations. It was a quiet ride that she spent looking at her scroll for suitable enough areas, it was a hard look. Why the residential district? As he put it, a mutual ground and I suppose this is it, Blake replied. Her arms and legs were crossed together. Weiss looked in front, the bus driver eyed the mirror for a moment. She took a breath, trying to settle her nerves. Did your former group move in? I don't know, I left a while ago, but I wouldn't be surprised. Weiss mulled it over, but she didn't think of anything new. Blake had chances to turn her over to the White Fang. What would a great captain possibly do in this situation? This is our stop, she stood. Naruto followed in step. The rain picked up and she was annoyed at the cold rain pricking at her exposed skin. She ignored and pressed on until she found the nearest store. What are we doing in here? Naruto asked. So, you won't break our cover, Weiss replied. Trying not to show her annoyance, as it had nothing to do with him. It's also raining. Right, how am I doing that? Irrecognizable, since apparently, the leader saw your face. She went down the shopping lanes, trying to avoid the few people that wandered around. She had to remind herself that they would be looking elsewhere, but she couldn't leave it to chance. A surgical mask was the best thing she thought of that didn't involve a trip to another district. When she found a package, she took one out and handed it to him. Oh, I get it now, he frowned and sighed. Is there a scarf or anything? I doubt they have much in a general store, she said. He looked around, eyeing the signs before giving up. Now put it on, that way they won't recognize you while crossing the street. He put it around his ears and tightened the strings. How do I look? Sick. Now you must act it too, cough. Ugh, you don't have act like you're dying. His cheeks pulled back for a moment, I didn't even think of this, what else? At least someone was aware. Another quick look around and she found that they also sold umbrellas. Basic, cheap, but protection from the rain at least. He didn't have a hood either, Purr and Blake had been prepared. Pick one, I'll buy it. She said. He mumbled his thanks and picked out an orange one. They went to the cashier and bought it with her credit card. They exited and went down a street away from any malls or parks. She had a scroll with a map centered on their location, she would have to do this since Naruto couldn't read. It was silent between them for a long while. Exceedingly so. He seemed content enough to stare at the buildings and cars passing by. Though, she wasn't particularly surprised. Let's talk about school, she said. The only sound was the pitter-patter of the rain or the splashes as they walked over puddles. Not many braved the weather. Sounds awful, he replied. You're from another place. Yep. But that in mind, you can speak another language. I guess, he shrugged. Weiss smiled, an incredible confirmation, now he couldn't deny the next question. Seeing as you can do that, there must be a form of writing that you can do. Oh crap. He made it too easy. She pulled out her scroll to cross out a large section of a neighborhood. I can't believe you hadn't been writing down notes. You're really determined about this, it's, a pause, annoying. Then, something that she hadn't thought of until now. It made her feel guilty, don't you miss wherever you came from? I've already made my mind about it. I had no family anyways. He looked forward, at a building surrounded by fences, a large keep out sign. If he said so, then she wouldn't pry further, besides, they had important tasks. Perhaps that's a suitable place, she said. Alright, let's break some rules. It's for the greater good. The greater good, he replied. They jaywalked across the street and made their way into an alleyway. No one was looking, so they climbed over the fence. Down another revealed a road, a back alley. In the back of the building, they noticed no lights there were on. It looked to be abandoned. He pointed to the window on the second floor, I'll check if there's anyone inside, like he had done it 1,000 times over. He climbed over to the crack in the wall, then to a pipe before finding the windowsill. He leaned higher to gather a view, and he placed an ear to the window. Weiss kept herself busy by keeping watch. Down the empty, rain-ridden alleyways, and through the fogged windows. It was hard to spot any movement from the constant pour, but she was certain no one was watching. It's empty, Naruto said. He had moved along the length of the windows and jumped down to meet her. Weiss made her way to door and removed Midenister, she slashed the chain apart. She threw the pieces somewhere near the dumpster. He was first inside. It was a workshop, a garage, to be exact. They moved inside, and with her rapier drawn, she moved along and checked her corners for any movement. Naruto hadn't drawn his sword, confident in his own scouting. There were no cars, and any tools were collecting dust. Not as decrepit as she thought. There was a second floor, with a skylight on the roof. This looks like a good place, he said. There were places to hide, in the corners, the rooms, or on the second floor. A bit small, but I agree, Weiss pulled out her scroll and marked it down. One place had marked on the map by Pura and Blake. They left the building and went on their way. Their back alley was also another suitable place, but it wasn't preferable with the apartments around. They got back on the street and passed by a couple of pedestrians. You looked super annoyed earlier, was it the rain? Yes, that was a part of it. The dress isn't so great for rain, guess our great captain can forget stuff too. I'm so glad it's humorous to you. You weren't prepared either. I didn't mind a little rain, but I don't mind if I'm dry either. Another lull, if only we had rentals, she sighed. She couldn't find any available today, only being the other side of the city. They came across a drained pool and with a courtyard. She marked it down. The rain began to pour harder. This was going to be a long day. The rain hadn't let up and the clouds covered the sky as far as she can see. I'm wondering, Naruto murmured, what makes you want to be a huntress? What made you want to be a huntsman? She countered. It was a basic question, she heard many students talking about why they chose this field. Well, I'm really good at fighting. So, I thought why not? How modest of you, Weiss replied. It came again, before then. He smiled, I wanted to stop people from being idiots, you know, they never stopped from fighting, I wanted no more of that. And you'd solve that by fighting? She asked. He shrugged and she felt she had to share now. The legacy of my name has been sullied by my father and it shall be known that another will restore it. He seemed full of smiles today, so you being the captain is a part of that. More like extra credit. Ah, I get it. And what we're doing now. She narrowed her eyes, but he wasn't paying much attention, a step. He smiled, I'm all for it then. They'd been searching for hours, but the rain hadn't let up. Her raincoat could only take enough, she felt the rain seep through, or perhaps condensation. Not to mention it was a constant white noise to her sensitive hearing. She had enough. Nikos was a beautiful girl, a gifted fighter, but she wasn't good at this. How long will this farce go on? Her returned, wide-eyed, excuse me. Blake rolled her eyes and continued their pace. It doesn't take much intuition to know that our peerless leader asked you to keep a watch on me. There's no use denying it, or you can, it doesn't really matter either way, Blake interrupted. Pura had stopped walking since she had declared it. She did, Pura replied. We spoke after what happened last week. I wonder what our captain wants, I don't think she's doing this for me out of the kindness of her heart. Then again, I would trust myself over others to dole out justice. Either way, it was a chance, or it would still end up going horribly wrong for her. Might as well do the best choice. Neither seemed great, just a lesser evil. Still, she made it this far. Staring at the door, waiting for huntsmen or the authorities to show up any minute. Perhaps she wanted to give you a chance, Pura said. Blake didn't agree with that optimistic outlook, but she didn't bother to argue. Are we going to keep looking, or not? Pura joined her, and they wandered the blocks of streets. There was a downpour, not many would hear them. So, are you going to tell Weiss? She did say to, and she explained what you might do. What's stopping you? I don't know, Pura replied. You're a kind person, Blake, you're here trying to make a difference. For justice, I think we can put aside our squabbles. I think if you both talked about it, you'd both agree. Blake gave a non-committal answer. Weiss's seemed to do that, but she kept her options close, and a change of heart wasn't out of the question. No matter what happened, it seemed to end up with speaking to the authorities. Unless she ran. They were interrupted by a call, a group one judging by how both of theirs rang. Blake ignored hers, instead standing close to Pura. Pura? Blake. We're here, Blake responded. Naruto, you don't need to do that, just press the red button right there, Weiss said. Amusing. Anyway, we've found more than enough. There's a hotel near Gladys Park, we'll be heading there, I'll send you the room number if we get there first. Blake looked over the map, there were several lines crossed over streets, places to avoid. Circles that denoted suitable areas, with a couple notes scrawled beside them. Judging by where Weiss was last, they would reach it first. Okay, Pura said, we'll see you there. How lucky for them that the rain began to settle when they were done with the day. She hoped it was no omen. They found the nearest bus route that led to the park, then it was a short walk to the hotel. Blake was surprised it wasn't a luxurious hotel, or at least something to Weiss's tastes. A basic neon sign placed vertically that spelled hotel. Though, perhaps the residential district wasn't the place for it. Weiss had messaged the room. Pura led the way through the lobby, the clerk paid no attention to them. They caught the elevator to the second floor and got to their room number. Weiss was the one to answer the door, Naruto sat near the window, staring out as he drummed the table in a rhythm. Pura, here's your room key. I managed to find a car rental, and they reserved a couple for pickup for tomorrow morning. It would have been useful today, but the attack had put a lot of things on hold. The rooms were merged together, judging by the open door near the entrance. They held the same things, but for now she kept in sight. Weiss looked at them both, a silence descended on them. I'm going to get food for us, so I'll be back. She left, and Blake felt she could relax without her here. She sat down on a sofa, the only sound being the rain hitting against the window that Naruto seemed to enjoy staring at. Purah set down her gear that she brought and busied herself with it. Her shield wasn't the subtlest thing to carry around, and her armor she kept in a bag couldn't be comfortable after some time. Purah busied herself with it, drying the pieces with a cloth. Blake brought out a book, finding it disappointingly damp. It was Naruto that broke the odd silence. Purah. Mind if I speak to Blake alone for a little? He asked. Purah's eyes flickered between them. I mean, we're only talking, you can take the scrolls. No, Purah replied. It's fine, really. I'll just take a shower. She gathered her gear and went into the other room. Before long the shower was running. You got rid of my chaperone, Blake muttered. He blinked. I was just thinking that you would be more willing to talk without her. Anyway, so far so good I'd say. Been a whole week and no huntsmen have come to get you. He was awfully optimistic despite how glum he looked all the time. I suppose it lasted this long, that still leaves the end. I'd like to plan for that, worst case scenario I get imprisoned. That wouldn't be right. Lots of things aren't right, but they still happen anyway. I'd rather not waste away locked up. The good thing is what kind of evidence would they have to put her away? Well, I would do something about it. She leaned back, eyes narrowing. You do know what you're talking about. Of course, he replied. He fiddled with his thumbs. I don't know how to say it, but I only know what I know, and that's doing right. I don't really understand. You're trying to better yourself, he shrugged. Like I've been saying, talk to Rice. Blake mulled over his words and their implications. She'd rather not talk to Weiss, it probably wouldn't lead anywhere. Then his words came to mind, but she didn't bother to delve on them. For your sake, let's hope it works out. I'd hate to be right. I hate to be wrong. Tomorrow they would know, after all. Can you keep your feet off the dash? It's not safe, Weiss said. It's also a rental. It was too bad that he couldn't find any sturdy sandals. It's what he was used to, but these shoes would have to do. He pulled out his scroll and tried to fiddle with it again. Their group communication. Each portrait highlighted whenever they talked. Blake, did you manage to set it up? I did, how does it sound? A little muffled, but it'll work. Okay, I won't be able to hear you once I'm apart from Purah. This technology was different than he was used to, and he didn't understand the words on the screen. The symbols were straightforward once he knew what they did. Purah appeared on the screen, a video feed. She stared ahead, as she was the one driving. I can see you, looks alright, he muttered. He could hear the hum of the car's engine that ran from her video. We're almost there, Purah said. She put down the scroll, pointed toward the roof. He saw them at the edges of the screen. Weiss turned the engine on, but they were still parked. All they had to do was wait and race to where the meeting might be held. Naruto bounced his leg restlessly. He looked out the window. It was still raining from yesterday. Nestled by the passenger door, he gripped Kusanagi by the pommel, knuckles going white. We're here, Purah said. Breaking him from his thoughts. It begins, Weiss said. Blake exited the car, her door slamming shut. The pitter-patter of the rain, the incoherent mutters of the crowd, the brushes against the microphone. Through the video feed, Purah kept it centered on Blake through dark-tinted windows. She stood in front of a cafe for some long minutes. Did you talk to Blake? Purah asked. No, I've been busy with trying to plan. He frowned, but it was too late now. Blake wasn't going to be locked up, he was going to make sure of it. For now, he'd focus on this. Well, it looks like you guys are serious, a muffled voice said. Their attention was brought to the screen. It was hard to see. A lightly bearded man had a cigarette to his mouth. He took a drag and blew it out. It didn't seem like the man he had seen last week. We were exclusive, you joined, or you didn't, Blake replied. The man hummed. I sure recognize you, even without the mask, he tapped his forehead. You were right beside that leader of yours. He noticed Weiss clenched the scroll tightly, she grimaced. Naruto refocused on the video, where Blake had crossed her arms, not now. Of course, name's Mord. She introduced herself, now, where to? They traded a few places until they came upon an agreement. Strangely enough, it was the garage that they had been to first. They separated and agreed to follow. That's a straight shot for them, Weiss muttered. He started to drive the car. I doubt we'll be able to make it before them. It'll work out, Purah said. They hit the first red light. Weiss gripped the wheel. We planned for this. Blake returned to the car, a deep sigh. Follow that car, see it. The red one. It was silent, only the hum of the car and the passing traffic. He could tell everyone was preparing what they came for, as he was doing the same. They hit another red light, the traffic surged to stop. Naruto peered outside the window, it seemed awful slow. He looked to the rooftops and imagined himself running through the cold rain. "Where are you?" Purah asked. "We're almost there." "Okay, we have to go." The last thing he saw from the video was them putting on masks. Apparently, in similar style of the White Fang. "Be safe," Weiss sighed as they both dropped from the audio. He thought about the split up. Stick together, but there would be no surprise attack. In this approach, Blake and Purah were vulnerable. What bothered him was that he didn't know which was best. "To let you know, I'll be calling the authorities," Weiss replied. He shrugged, it didn't matter too much. Give her a chance, it was all he could say. She didn't reply, only pulling out her scroll. They parked down by the street, near the alleyway. By the time they got out, she was done speaking. There was no one around and he was the first to reach the alleyway. He peered down but saw nothing. He felt his heart start to hammer in his ears, the tips of his fingers being electrified. He felt goosebumps and it was enough to make him shiver. "Let's hurry," she rushed forward. He almost felt breathless, he remembered how the door creaked and groaned, how are we supposed to sneak in? There might be roof access, but our best bet is the skylight. She unsheathed her weapon, they were close. They stopped before another alley, checking it before moving on. He could die here. He stopped for a moment but pressed forward. Weiss completed some movements, and up ahead, by the building a glyph appeared on the ground. Go first, step on it, then jump. Try to land quietly. Naruto didn't hesitate. For that moment, it felt like he had chakra again. He was in the air, higher than the building. His momentum stopped and he came down, like instinct, he made his landing silent. He itched for it. His skin felt each droplet of rain, he could hear the drowning white noise of the rain. There was a skylight, a generator, and a latch. They could do a stealth approach if it was unlocked. Weiss landed behind him and he motioned to follow. He pulled slightly and it gave way for a stroke of luck. It was dark inside the simple storage room. Numerous shelves littered the entire wall and another closed door, but it was empty. Weiss went down first and he followed. When he closed the latch, he could hear them. "I know not what awaits us, but for those taken by Grimm, there will be no rest." Weiss turned the knob, but the door squeaked and she stopped immediately. It felt a whistle to his ears. They stopped breathing. "We shall help each other, in whatever way, money, men, or resources. To take or to give." The person continued to talk and nothing was out of place. Weiss closed her eyes, took a breath, she pulled it fast. Not another creak. Enough room to go through. Now, the voice echoed in the shop as they crept closer. There was no one on the second floor. "I offer a partnership and we shall work together to save all those souls, such as those the week before." He didn't know what came over him, one moment, he was crouching, the next, he jumped over the railing and landed behind them. Purah and Blake were on the other side. Masked and tense, they could only stare. "What the fuck are you on about?" Naruto asked. Everyone else turned to him, 3 of them drew their weapons. He recognized the mask, the one right before the explosion. He was the one stood atop the roof and waved to him. "I know you," he said. His voice was deep and smooth. "You avoided salvation. I think you don't understand what that means, pal." The man waved his hand, the others lowered their weapons, but kept it in hand. Mord was the only one who had no mask. His companions kept a careful eye on Blake and Purah. "None of you are a part of the White Fang, at least not anymore. You think you're saving people? I don't think I've met anyone more deluded. Youthful ignorance is a sight to behold," the man replied. Naruto could see the green eyes behind his mask. "I was not gifted with any vision, nor had it come with a reverie. I have seen it with my own eyes. No more shall be offered." "You're crazy," Naruto said. He drew Kusanagi and everyone followed his action. He couldn't even make out what they used their weapons for, firearms weren't out of the question. "I, Satyrios, will save you," he reached behind his back. A strange whip, but it was no rope, instead pieces of blades were strung along the length. He could only ask himself on how that worked. "Your name won't matter after today." White glyphs appeared above, a hand grasped his shoulder, the other palm facing forward. It was chaos as missile fired at these maniacs. He flinched from a flash, a bang and his ears rung. Something whipped toward Weiss and he met it with Kusanagi to knock it away. The bladed whip, it wrapped around the edges and pulled him forward. It nearly knocked him off his feet. It didn't make sense, but there was no time to think. Satyrios leapt forward with his underling, he angled his pommel, a white flash. Something stung him, hot and wet. Weiss met the other with her rapier in hand. It was his turn to pull. He lurched him forward and with a fist held high, smashed his stupid mask. Satyrios hit the ground. Weiss was in trouble. Knocked back with a kick, she was wide open. He threw a shuriken, it didn't sink, instead a blue shimmer deflected it off his head. The man flinched, as if it sunk. "What th?" His legs were swept and fell on his back. knocking his breath away. A long blade descended on his neck. His body moved of its own accord, his hands twisted kusanagi, laying flat along his body to his face. Its death edge blocked, instead it was a cold slap to his face when it reached him. He saw stars, but he kicked where Statchar stood. His foot connected, and he rolled backward and onto his feet to meet him again. Naruto swung and made the man lose his weapon. He was left open for the kick and his opponent was blown through glass and into a room. His arm felt sore and his ears still rung. He should be moving faster, he should be hitting harder. Naruto shook his head to get back his senses. Something was thrown out, a small black orb with smoky tendrils. It collapsed in, disappearing. He no longer felt the floor and he was pulled toward it as well as everything near it. Glass shards and dust. He covered his face and he lost the grip of his weapon. He went through the broken glass, pulling him toward the wall. He angled his knees and hands, catching himself before gravity returned. A revelation, it was like Nagato. Naruto heard a muted yell and he caught Statchar's fist. They traded blows, but for each time he managed to hit, a dark shimmer of aura appeared. What the fuck was this aura business? They ended in a grapple, trying to overpower one another. He pushed him back, but the grip still held strong. Flashes of red and blue. It won't end here. Naruto headbutted him, cracking the mask. He should have learned the first time how hard one can be, like concrete. Statchar let go and managed to get under him. Naruto then felt how it was to be used as a wall smasher. He was thrown through a wall. He recovered, only to witness how he summoned that strange ability. Two hands hovered over his chest, dark smoky orbs formed in the palm of each hand. Like he was trying to grab his heart. He threw both, one ahead and behind him. Naruto knew what would happen, he hung onto a beam. He felt himself being pulled like last time. Shaking off his disorientation, Naruto peered behind him. Several moving bodies littered the floor, everything had been thrown around. He noticed Weiss first, staggering to her feet, her light blue eyes found him. Go get him. She commanded. She focused on the others. It was good enough for him. He ran after Statchar, clambering over the collapsed heap of the second floor and through a hole in the wall. He noticed several people running down the alleyway and he was about to give chase. Someone else was there to meet him, blocking his way. An older woman, olive-toned skin and brown hair. A couple others pointed their weapons at him. She held a staff in her hand, edge first in the concrete ground. She said something, lips moving, but he only heard the constant ringing in his ear. What? He yelled. She said it louder this time, I said, don't move or we'll shoot. It was the authorities. There was still a light drizzle in the alleyway and flashing lights reflected off the windows. Someone's running, he said breathlessly. He grimaced, he could have caught the bastard. My partners are already on it, she replied. The woman hummed and motioned to her forearm, you're bleeding. He patted it, but it didn't hurt. It's not mine. The voice came from inside. Madam, these younger ones are claiming to be from Beacon Academy. Really? The woman said, I went there too. I wonder what Ozpin has to say about all this. It'll take a moment to confirm if it's true, team name. NPBW. A smile, for now, you can call me Amber. What if Naruto and Weiss Romance harem rwby? And thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoy this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel and leave a like if you guys need the next part, comment down, and thanks for watching the video and see you guys in the next video.